identified more than 30 varieties of iridescent rectangles, ranging from personal and work rectangles to rectangles that heat food and those that can fit right in one's pocket.
From the moment Americans wake up, they are captivated by these bright, pulsing rectangles. In fact, if you look at the data, it's hard to find a single minute when the public isn't captivated by these, excuse me. I'm sorry, where were we?
In local news, a run-over squirrel is remembered as frantic and indecisive. And in other news, a trail of rose petals leads a wife to a sink full of dishes. Prince Fielder reports to spring training exactly the right amount overweight, and a local yard sale reeks of divorce. If you don't hear the sound of my voice the same time next week, alert my family and then visit theonion.com/newsbeat.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number here. That's 603-283-6160. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Riley,
and Chris.
And on the show tonight, we have a bunch of different things to talk about, including, this was kind of surprising to me, but the guys who are behind Doge, Vivek Ramaswamy and, not RFK, Elon Musk, they actually wrote an opinion piece for Wall Street Journal.
Oh, wow. That should be interesting.
So yeah, I haven't read it or anything. Ian sent it to me. But, yeah, I thought that was interesting because most of the time, like, something gets rolled out with the government, they don't feel like they have to, like, go tell people what their intentions are, you know?
Right, they just do it.
Yep, they just do it. And they don't really have much to, like, much care what the people think about it or anything. But, yeah, Ian's been reading Wall Street Journal in prison, and he's always sending me show prep from there. And Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy wrote this article themselves. It's an opinion commentary. The Doge plan to reform government. Following the Supreme Court's guidance will reverse a decades-long executive power grab. Which sounds like good stuff, you know?
It's a good start, I guess.
How is it going to reverse a decades-long power grab?
Well, the executive branch has the quote-unquote power to just create, you know, the DEA here, the FDA here, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And Doge is supposed to be cutting that out. Like, not cutting the power out, but cutting a bunch of these agencies that have been created, things that are not actually useful. That's the idea. I'm not saying, oh, I know they'll definitely do it.
Okay, because what I'm just thinking is, okay, so let's say, you know, Trump gets rid of all these agencies through the Government of Accountability or whatever the heck it's called now.
Department of Government
Efficiency.
Yeah.
Okay. So the efficiency department gets rid of all these other departments or whatever. The next time, when the next president gets elected, they're just going to bring them all back.
Potentially.
I mean, do you think they'll bring them all back if he gets rid of like thousands of different
Well, maybe
positions?
not.
I think there was something like 400 and something.
Not positions.
No,
There's definitely
departments.
thousands of positions. Yeah.
Departments, so there's way more positions.
Right. And I'm just asking, you think he's going to, the next government president guy
I think
is
that's
going to come and be like,
probably what's going to happen.
This is what I'm going to do when I get in. Create 400 departments. Like, that's never happened before.
Yeah.
It all depends on what Trump really does. I mean, is he going to eliminate departments? Is he going to make it look like he's eliminating departments? Because I remember...
Right. Neither of us know for sure.
Yeah, I remember...
I'm just asking what's more likely.
I remember during his first administration, I believe he was planning on slashing some regulations, but I don't remember how that panned out, really.
He slashed some regulations, made some... regulations, and he didn't make the same kind of promises back then. He was just making, like, conservative promises, which he didn't keep all of them. this year he's making it's like he's not running on the same platform at all. So we do have a caller on the line. Creighton in Kentucky, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Hi, I called in tonight because I wanted to revisit a topic that came up last night regarding the Catholic Church and the AI Jesus confessional. And really what I wanted to talk about is that you had a caller and a host that got into a deep discussion about Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm not an expert, I went to 12 years of Catholic school and was subject to religion courses every one of those years. And there are a couple of things that a lot of people don't realize about the Catholic Church unless you deep into it. Even a lot of Catholics don't realize some of these things. Back in once upon a time, Martin Luther broke free from the Catholic Church with a few complaints, and created the Lutheran Christian religion,
Mm-hmm.
and which also broke up into several different schisms over the following 100 years or so. And ultimately, the conflict between this Lutheranism and Catholicism ended up in the 30 Years' War around in the early 1600s. That is probably one of the worst conflicts to have ever occurred.
And you're saying that occurred because this new religion kind of split off from Catholicism called Lutheranism?
It's complicated, but it took till the Second Vatican Council for the Catholic Church to acknowledge that Martin Luther had a point. But after Martin Luther broke free and started this whole different Protestant line, one of the popes along the line realized that this could happen again, and actually declared that going forward, that no Catholic order may declare another Catholic order to be heretical.
By order, you mean like a sect, kind of like the main branch can't declare a different branch with a different belief heretical?
Yeah, it was an effort to prevent future violent schisms within the Catholic Church itself. So as a result, the Catholic Church in the world, worldwide speaking, is not as monolithic as it appears, even though it has a head of church. So growing up in a Catholic school system, they weren't willing to actually get deep into the doctrine lest they step on some order's version of things.
I mean, that really sounds like it checks out, because it's like, as a kid, I grew up Christian with my mom having very strong opinions on what this verse means, what people should act like as Christians, etc. And every time I met a Catholic like my age growing up, they would always be like, no, yeah, I'm super Christian too. My parents are super Christian too. Yeah, we're Catholic. And it's like, do you guys ever talk about what you believe? No. Have you ever read the Bible? No. And it's like, all they do is just go to church, and like, it seems very like, what do you even believe?
Wait, isn't that what makes you super Catholic, is going to church?
Well, everyone who's Christian goes to church. Well, everyone who's like really Christian goes
to church.
Everyone
who's Christian definitely goes to church on Sunday.
But there's a difference between, my whole life is dictated.
So
I
would say most of the people that I think were Catholic didn't go to church. Or at least not regularly.
That's another big point. Lots of people who are Catholic just don't go to church. All my point is that Catholics are way less religious than the average like Southern American Christian, and I don't even think they realize it. Like, they will talk to you like, yeah, no, seriously, I'm so Christian too. Like, my mom made me get baptized. It's like, okay, my mom got me baptized at 4. And
I you know what? I think I agree
that
with you that
affects-
their Catholics are not super religious. At least
Yeah,
my
they're-
vision of what I've seen at Catholics be is not super religious.
There are definitely Catholics who just do mass on Easter and Christmas.
Right, that's exactly what I
Well,
saw.
right.
There's a difference between Catholic as a religion and Catholic as a culture. What you're describing is Catholic as a culture. I grew up like in that environment. I also grew up in the religion, and they're hard to separate, but they're there. It's like being born Jewish
Yeah.
in the Jewish faith.
Yep.
They
Yeah.
both have a role, but they're not the same thing.
Yeah, I
It's
know,
almost like
definitely true.
it's almost like an ethnicity, like
Yeah.
being Jewish, and then the religious.
Yeah,
being
it's not an
religious Jew.
ethnicity when you're Catholic, but
It's not, but it's
it
sort of
is
similar
culture. Well,
in
yeah,
like
because
in
it's like a
terms of
culture.
yeah.
But that's the same with Christianity, and every second of a normal Christian in Alabama's life is like thinking, what would God think about this? Blah, blah, blah. And it feels to me like and I lived in San Antonio, been to Catholic funerals. Like, it's not that I've ever been Catholic, never been interested, but I've known tons of Catholics, dated a Catholic. And it just feels like, yeah, oh, that's just I'm already a Catholic. Yeah, I'm set. I don't have to think about religion at all. Almost 100%. I met this one the other year, like 2 years ago or a year ago, at one of Zephin's Bitcoin meetup things where he does sermons, and he really cared about all of the, oh, this is what it means, and he told me about having like a religious experience, which is a very rare thing from any Catholics I know, where it's like, oh, I heard the voice of God type of thing. Usually they're like, no, that stuff isn't real. We just sit in church until we're super bored the whole time, repeat our things, and then go out to eat, and like they're fine with like their kids being gay, stuff like that. Way more often.
Well,
Yeah. Interesting.
that's kind of what I wanted to point out, is that it's not every Catholic agrees with that statement, or anyone, but over the course of the conversation last night, they got into the debate about purgatory,
Mhm.
because I think it's a wonderful example of the conflict that still exists. Is that you will have Catholics who talk about the possibility of going to purgatory rather than being condemned to hell or going immediately into heaven. You get this third way that is purgatory. And yeah, there's some people will say that, and then there will other Catholics like, you know what? There's no basis in the actual Bible for that,
Yeah, there's not.
but they're not allowed to argue about it. That's what I mean. It's not allowed to have that kind of debate
Interesting, because I mean,
anymore.
it seems like the callers who called in that were Catholic last night and were really serious about it. It seems like they were doing exactly what you're saying they weren't allowed to.
How do
they weren't allowed to
you even have a debate in like a religious context?
Right.
I mean, it just seems like, I guess everything you're saying, you would cite Bible verses. Okay, so
Yeah.
I mean, but the Bible verses, like,
But then when you're Catholic, you have all this extra stuff that isn't biblical. So
yeah, and
I
then
don't know.
it's like interpretation of the law, depending on how it's defined in different places, might mean something different.
It's like last night I was like, yeah, I like a little bit of what you believe right there, Dana. I like that idea, and here's why. And it's comes from a totally different like sect of Christianity that I was interested in, but I don't 100% like buy into. Like, I don't call myself a Swedenborgian, but I like a lot of the way that they put stuff out, and it's all just because I heard that and I thought, wow, that makes a lot of sense to me. I would believe that about the afterlife. So can I argue it? No. I can tell you, oh, I think this makes a lot of sense and I like the idea. It like brings me comfort, but that doesn't mean I can tell someone this, that, and the other thing and then make them agree with me over something else that can't be proven that they believe, you know? I think it's such a weird thing to like get angry about. But I do understand people like callers getting angry and calling in when people are insulting their religions, and I've been really trying hard not to do that anymore, because the thing is, the older I get, the more I know that I just don't know everything.
Exactly, and arguing over religion is just pointless. It
is.
And are you guys familiar with the term apologetics?
Yeah.
So when I was in my LDS phase of life, or my Mormon phase of life, I delved into a lot of Mormon apologetics because I wanted to be I wanted to be more interested in defending the faith better. And so definitely, citing all the scriptures to defend your point or whatever became easy to figure out how to do when you learn from other people. But every religion has their apologists, and every religion is going to have their people defending it because that's what they do. They want to make sure that they claim to be the one true faith on the planet.
Is this something that like religions actually do with each other? Like they debate each other?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, that happens.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's like theological schools and everything too. So like, be different people like.
How do they do it? Like, are there like debate? Like, I've never heard of this.
Like actual debates, I'm sure there are, honestly.
Oh, how else would they do it?
Just writings, like somebody is just like
Okay.
a theologist, they went to college for it, and then they write, this is how I think Christians need to think about this part of the Bible. And
You
then
guys are so much deeper into like
Yeah.
knowing like what religious people do than I.
Were you raised Catholic?
I don't know. This goes back to the
That's
whole
a no.
the whole. No, I think I did. I think I went to I think there was a Catholic church I was a part of or whatever. No, like I
You
don't
might
even,
underestimate
like,
how much Chris doesn't care about this kind of stuff. Like
I don't.
Even as a kid, he
I
did not.
I didn't care then. I don't care now, and I didn't even know. Like, I think I figured. I realized I was part of a Catholic something or other, but I didn't even know that like the difference between a Catholic and a Christian. Like I couldn't even, if you had asked me this like 10 years ago, I would have been like, there's a difference.
Mm-hmm. I think the
Well,
Catholics are
Catholic
definitely
has-
Christians.
I agree. I think people who
The
say that
Catholic-
Catholics aren't Christian are.
Well, I think Catholics say they're Christians, so like they're one and the same. So like,
The
or at
reason
least
I use a differentiator when I'm saying like, oh, I grew up Christian, not Catholic, is because there isn't one word to call what I grew up. My parents would go from church to church, taking this here and that there, things that made sense to them, and I think that's a totally valid way to do it.
So they're non-denominational Christians, essentially?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, here's one way you can determine which side of that Protestant versus Catholic you actually really grew up on is when you pick up your Bible. Does it have 66 books or 72? If it has 72 books in it, it's a Catholic Bible. If it has
wait, books?
66
Isn't there like the
Books.
Gospel of Mary or something else?
Isn't there just a Bible,
No.
like a single book? Like,
well, the Bible
Bible's-
has books inside of it.
Yeah, the Bible is a
Matthew,
collection
Mark,
of various
Luke, John, you know?
quote-unquote books, if
I
you
know
will.
all of them by heart in the New Testament, not the Old Testament. But
Yeah.
it
No,
starts.
we're not talking about the Gospel of Mary or anything like that. The New Testament is identical in both versions,
Oh,
but the Old Testament, the Catholics have
The
6 more
Apocrypha.
books in the Old Testament. Yeah, the Apocrypha. The difference is the Apocrypha. And I'll be perfectly honest, if you're a Catholic, you probably don't read the Apocrypha either. But it's
do you know at least one of the books' names that aren't common in the other Bibles?
I think it's Esdras would be one.
Esdras. Never even heard of that.
Maccabees.
I want to say Maccabees is one.
Wow.
Book of Wisdom, I think.
Never heard of
um,
those.
It's been so long.
I just realized the Gospel of
there's an
Mary, I
extra
think, is
cha-
Gnostic, so I was
Yeah.
thinking something totally else, like after Jesus.
There's an extra 2 chapters of Daniel in the Catholic version as
Interesting.
well.
well, one thing I can say for
so-
sure is I've never read the Bible, so maybe pieces of it, but
I've never finished it.
yeah, it's a long book, man. And then I know there's different Bibles, but
Yeah, I got a book the other day
Yeah.
because I'm interested in it called, oh man, I already forgot, but it's basically like a companion piece that helps you learn more about like what actual word was used in Hebrew here and stuff like that. So I'm going to start reading
oh,
it.
that's right, because they're all going to be translations.
Mm-hmm.
Translations are translations, yep.
Yeah.
Greek.
Yep.
Coptic, and I think Hebrew.
Yeah, and like when they translated it, like they've translated like sections that are like not even in the original, like they just made stuff up, from what I understand.
Yeah, there definitely was. I read this book called Misquoting Jesus.
Yeah, that would be by Bart Ehrman.
Yeah, and I really like his books. They're so fascinating. He's one of these people like went to college and he like does college lectures
Yeah,
on
he's-
Bible stuff.
He's a great biblical person. I think he's a great scholar. I like his writings. I like his ideas.
Well, in Misquoting Jesus, he talks about how, well, there wasn't like the printing press yet in the early days, so what they would do was, oh, this one person can read and write. He's the scribe. And he will take the Bible he got from someone, like another town has this book of the Bible, gives it to that scribe. The scribe looks and writes and like just writes it with his own hand
Right.
to have a new copy. And the thing is, like, if he came across something, because they weren't back then they weren't as, oh, this is what the Bible says. At the very beginning, like after Jesus died, like, you know, the next like 200 years, there was just
A lot of different versions.
a lot of different versions.
Yeah,
and if a scribe came
and a
across
lot of it was
something-
passed down
wait, one
orally,
second.
too.
If a scribe came across something and was like, well, this says this, but no, that is not how it is. I believe that it's this way. They would add or
Well-
subtract things. And there is proof of
Yeah,
it.
from
Those arguments,
what I recall from history
Those
is that they also destroyed a lot of different versions. So like, there's a lot fewer versions today than there were, you know, a couple thousand years ago.
That's
those
true.
disagreements were largely resolved with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are still the oldest copies of the books of the Bible that we have.
I don't think that's true
so-
at all.
Yeah, but there were different versions, right? Like, what weren't there like different, like there were different Bibles, and the Bible itself came from like different pieces of paper and stuff that were written down. From what I recall, at least, I mean, that's supposedly what happened.
Yeah.
There were different versions, yes, and then they were resolved by the discovery and publication of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Even if
I don't even
one-
understand.
the oldest version was ever found, which there's definitely not an older version than the Q they have
See,
marked, the thing they call Q
Yeah.
of like the oldest thing that they have of the Bible is this version of Mark. It's not older than that, and there
No,
were no
that's
New
not what Q
Testament
is.
passages. There
So-
were no
so-
New Testament passages in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
So my understanding though was there were different. The book itself came from different writings, and then but it wasn't ever one book originally, and so there's like all these different
Yeah, it was
books,
weird.
and then they destroyed like a bunch of them at some point because there was during certain regimes
Yeah.
they only allowed for one version of it, and so like there's like what we have today is derived from like a version or something like that, even though
That's
it's then
100%
been
true. There were different meetings, not just the Council of
which
Nicaea.
goes back to the Dead Sea Scrolls. That might not have been the only version. So like, how can we know that like
Exactly. That's what I was
Yeah.
going to say. Even if there was like at the oldest book and it was Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, well, even then that just means, oh, that's one version
Right.
that they was found. And during that time, there were probably like, I don't even know, tens or hundreds of different versions of Christianity roaming around because it wasn't in lockstep yet. Like some people believe that Jesus, when he died, could turn into any form, including female and like a lion and stuff. And back then they were saying, yeah, like people who followed like I forget what they call themselves, but they followed the Gospel of Thomas. Have you heard that, Riley?
Yep, I have.
So a lot of those people believe like, oh, Jesus appeared to me as a female. That's not in line with the books we have now because they all had such different beliefs at that time. And what happened was there was this, I don't remember what he was, like an emperor or something named Constantine, and he wanted...
Yeah, he was an emperor, and yep.
He wanted to choose one of them. He wasn't that like that sold on any one version of Christianity. He got everyone who was like a Christian leader from all over their world to come together, and they kind of fought over things. Some people got so mad they left, so obviously that guy's interpretation is out. And then they came up with like, okay, this is canon, and everything else is just non-canonical, and we're throwing it away from now on. It's not like it was based on, oh, we found out this is more true and that's less true. Like, there's no way to say,
Yeah.
oh, you saw Jesus come to you as a female? Untrue. And we've proven it. Like, you can't do that. You can't prove that or disprove it. So therefore, they just chose what they liked, and then those ideas got written over and over and over again. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. you'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join today.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. US President-elect Donald Trump looks set to escape trial for his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election results and for retaining classified documents after investigators filed a motion to drop the case. Special counsel Jack Smith moved to dismiss 2 criminal cases against the former president due to a long-standing Justice Department policy that bars the prosecution of a sitting president. Benji Heyer reports from Washington.
He didn't win in the courtroom, but at the ballot box, and Donald Trump's victory in 2024 all but puts to an end his legal challenges by consigning his outstanding trials to the ash heap of history, both the one dealing with the previous election, which culminated in a deadly riot on Congress, and another on his alleged hoarding of classified documents, which was dismissed by a Trump-appointed judge this summer and is also being abandoned today by the Justice Department. His sentencing in his hush money case was postponed last week following a Supreme Court ruling which grants him presidential immunity. Having largely evaded America's justice system, Trump now has a chance to weaponize it in his favor as soon as he takes office.
New reporting suggests Israel could be on the verge of a ceasefire deal with Hezbollah in Lebanon following months of fighting. An agreement could be reached as soon as Tuesday when the Israeli cabinet next meets. Our US correspondent Mitch McCann reports.
Israeli media outlets as well as the US news website Axios are reporting that both sides are moving closer to an agreement in the American-led peace talks. Over the past year, more than 3,500 Lebanese people have been killed and 15,000 injured in the fighting. Meanwhile, Hezbollah has continued to launch strikes at Israel, with heavy rockets fired across the border as recently as Sunday. Reports suggest that a draft agreement would include a 60-day transition period, during which the Israeli Defense Forces would withdraw from southern Lebanon. Hezbollah would relocate its heavy weapons north of the Litani River, and the Lebanese army would deploy closer to the border. If a deal is reached, it could allow hundreds of thousands of people on either side of the border to return home. Mitch McCann, New York.
US retailers are hoping to lure shoppers to Black Friday sales in a bid to boost consumer spending. Analysts predict the US could see subdued sales over the holiday season if shoppers continue to tighten their wallets. Sally Patterson reports from New York.
The US National Retail Federation forecasts that winter holiday sales will reach almost $1 trillion in November and December. But the rate of spending growth is expected to be the slowest the country's seen since 2018. Even though inflation is coming down, analysts say consumer spending on non-essential items remains uninspiring.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
You control. That's Free Talk Live. And Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash, Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency made for spending. You can pay your bills with Dash at Spritz.finance. Plus, they can send dollars to your bank if you still need those for something. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org. And with you on Free Talk Live, you've got me, Bonnie,
Riley,
and Mr. Penguin.
And we all were like starting to say more things about the last conversation during the break, but I thought we should save it for the show. One thing I definitely wanted to say is like the government also of olden times, the government also influenced what people believe. And one way they did it that is like that you can point to this, find it in history books, is after Constantine did that thing where he brought a bunch of like pastors, whatever they would call themselves, together, and they decided what would be the tenets of the religion of Christianity. Well, they would actually give tax cuts to churches, which were like a huge part of the whole community, that would preach certain things. So if you were like, hey, I'm a pastor, or whatever you'd call yourself back then, you know, and I've been teaching this, whatever, idea about the Bible, and it's like, I agree with everything except this one little thing. But if I keep teaching that, I'm going to get my tax exemption taken from me. So that is just one way that the government was coercing people into finally getting in like lockstep, like I said, like now we all believe
it makes sense that government is
this sounds
doing
like
that.
something that hasn't gone away and we still suffer it today.
Yeah.
What was the
Essentially.
other? There was something else you were saying that the government was doing.
Well, governments throughout, you know, history have basically utilized, especially conquerors, have modified their religious beliefs to suit the conquered population in order to get them on board with their religion. So like it's sort of like they would adapt different pieces of, you know, whatever wherever they were invading that culture, their religious beliefs into their own, and then in order to sort of appease them and get them on board. And so it's kind of interesting that like the Christianity is just like, okay, it's been changing. It's evolved.
Oh yeah, it's changed a lot. I mean, that's how we got Christmas and Easter, with them adopting quote unquote pagan traditions.
That's a great example. Another one is something Gigi was talking about on the show. Honestly, I knew nothing about it until Gigi was talking about it. I looked into it like the littlest bit. That Muslims, so not Christianity anymore, but Muslims came and basically took over most of Spain for a long time. And when they got there, they kind of adapted Islam to be more palatable to the Spaniards. And I think that's the only reason that they were such a peaceful example of Islam.
The Muslims believe Jesus was
like a prophet.
Was a prophet or something, which I think is interesting. I wonder if that has something to do with the whole Muslims conquering like Spain or something like that. But I could see that, you know, whether that's what happened or not.
Christian. Does that make them Christian?
Yeah, it's a good question.
A good question.
Well, I think in order to be Christian, you have to believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God or something like that.
I think that you could just follow the teachings of Jesus, and he never said he was a god.
Well, wasn't Jesus Jewish?
Yeah.
Allegedly. I don't really know. The thing about it is I don't believe that the Bible is like a history book, and I'm not saying I don't believe that Jesus lived, because there's plenty of evidence that the man named Jesus lived. I really wish he wrote something down.
Me too.
I'm sure he did, and it was taken from us. Honestly, that's what I think all the time. The most likely thing is that Jesus wrote all these books, and he was like, yeah, I finally finished my 100th book, and then the government,
here's a question.
government took it
Is there
from
any
us.
evidence that Jesus could read and write?
Oh, I don't know. I wasn't saying
I mean,
there is or
the stories we're told in Christianity is that Jesus was a carpenter.
Right.
Yeah,
so that would suggest, I would think, that especially for the time period, that he probably couldn't read or write.
I don't think that necessarily does. That's not
No?
necessarily like, oh, that's low level. Like, no way that, like, you might think that maybe quote unquote now because there's better technology than making stuff with wood, but think about having to do like math.
Yeah, but being able to do math isn't the same thing as being able to, you know, read and write.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like, it's not the same thing as saying Jesus was a mud digger.
No, I
He couldn't have
wasn't
read,
trying to
right?
put it down. I'm just saying that, like, as you were pointing out earlier, you know, people were scribes, right?
Mhm.
And you would have one person in a community who could read and write. And so it's not likely it's going to be the person who deals with
Yeah,
the
but we don't
carpentry
know
or
anything
whatever.
about him. We don't even know what he did from ages 12 to I think 30.
Yeah, I guess.
I
I mean,
think
I guess
he
I don't know.
went
It just seems to me that it would be unlikely that he would be somebody who could read and
And
write.
even if he couldn't read and write himself, he could tell somebody something and they write it down.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
a big way
maybe
of
maybe during those, you know, between 12 and 30, he went to India and smoked some weed. Who knows?
Yeah, I honestly think that. I've got this book and I've never read it on my Kindle that said, it is just called, I think, Jesus Was in India. So I really want to know what their arguments behind that is, what their arguments are, I mean.
Yeah.
Really interesting stuff. But the reason we're talking about this right now, we're not a show about Christianity or religion or anything like that, but we're talking about this because you can call in with whatever is on your mind, and that's what a caller did. A caller called and changed the subject to religion and Catholicism because that's what it was on his mind. You can do that by calling 603-283-6160. We really appreciate all the calls, and changing the subject is not a problem at all. But one thing we were going to start talking about before we changed the subject was Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy's, and honestly, I always feel like I'm saying it wrong. Well, okay, I know I said Vivek wrong. So he has said it's Vivek like cake. So Vivek, is the E makes the A sound. But Ramaswamy, I've never went to go make sure I'm saying it right. Have you guys always heard it that way?
I don't even think I can pronounce that.
I don't even know how it's pronounced either. I just think it's an interesting name.
Ramaswamy?
It looks like Ramaswamy to me, but if his E says A, then I could be saying it so wrong. I was just wondering if you guys.
It sounds like what I've heard other people say it as or pronounce it the way they've pronounced it, but I can't pronounce it. That's just such a hard name to pronounce.
I will continue with that then. So Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, they wrote an opinion piece for Wall Street Journal, and it says here, the DOGE plan to reform government, and DOGE is all caps, it's the Department of Government Efficiency. Following the Supreme Court's guidance, will reverse a decades-long executive power grab. And I really want to get into what their plan is. This isn't necessarily set in stone. Oh, we know he will or they will do this, but this is what they are saying they'll do. That's all we know so far, because he's not even president yet, Trump. So they haven't gotten to actually start this stuff. I'm really hoping that Trump is right, that he will be able to get a ceasefire with Ukraine, quote, before he takes office.
That would be
okay.
Yeah, that would be
awesome.
Interesting because Russia has demonstrated that they're willing to use a lot of firepower.
Yeah, but they also have demonstrated that they respect Trump and not Biden.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think he could potentially do it, and that would make him already have all this fire behind him to get stuff done when he gets into office.
I just don't see this happening. I mean, my gut is that the Ukrainians are going to continue to fight the Russians with help from Europeans.
And that's actually my prediction, is that if it doesn't happen, it's not going to be the fault of Russia as much as it is going to be Zelensky. He doesn't care how many people dies. He's not going to give an inch.
Well, he's come over here to the United States a bunch of times to get support for his war with Russia.
And he's declined peace talks.
Yeah.
So way early on. So we do have a caller on the line though, so I'm going to go to them first. Unscreened caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Hey, Bonnie, this is Mark Watson. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
Hey, I just wanted to say that we are expanding here at Studio 8424 and Radio 8424. And I wanted to let you know that people can listen to Free Talk Live right now. Odyssey, Rumble, Pilled, and DLive are our newest multicasts. So, and I'm not sure if some people don't always know, but on Radio 8424, that the output on that is reduced, so you can listen to your car on your cell phone data plan. It's
Nice.
384K, so it's really easy to listen to over long distances.
Oh, that's a pretty cool perk for that. So what website could they go to? Just studio8424.com?
Yeah, studio8424.com points to one of our endpoints, and then radio8424.com points to one of our endpoints. When we actually do develop our website, we'll actually make it so you can self-select from the site which endpoint you want to actually listen to or watch.
Nice.
But right now they point directly to an endpoint. But you can also find us by going to Odyssey and just doing a search. I think it's Studio 8424 or Radio 8424, that kind of thing. I think the way it searches on there, they do a colon or something like that. So, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew about that because I appreciate Free Talk Live, and we're happy to promote it. We're also growing with other platforms. We're going to be getting BitChute added on and a few others. I have a blowtorch here. We're solar and battery backup, so we have our own power off grid, and we're about
Nice.
30 plus kilowatt hours blowtorch out here, and then we have gigabit fiber. So we're not going. The thing I like to tell people is that they can't shut us up and they can't shut us down.
That's pretty cool.
That is really cool that that's another option for people who are listening if they want to listen that way, and maybe cut down on some data costs, or like if you're on the go, that might change things, especially if you're listening live, because like it's different when you download the podcast episode afterwards.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for the call, Mark. And if you would like to call in, that number is 603-283-6160. So we were just about to start this article from Wall Street Journal by Elon and Vivek, and they're talking about their Department of Government Efficiency and what they're going to do. So let's get into it. Our nation was founded on the basic idea that the people we elect run the government. That isn't how America functions today. Most legal edicts aren't laws enacted by Congress, but rules and regulations promulgated by unelected bureaucrats, tens of thousands of them each year. It's absolutely true. That's the type of stuff my husband's in prison for. Not an actual law that was broken, but a regulatory
interpretation.
The interpretations do make a big difference, and regulators instead of lawmakers made the quote unquote laws that he broke, and it's just
in theory.
Yeah.
We don't even know, because it all depends on what they rule on appeal.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing that always drives me nuts. He was found guilty, but the process isn't over yet.
Yeah. He's
right. So how can you say somebody is guilty of something when they haven't even gone through the full process, and it's not permanent, right? It's not in stone yet. I mean,
unfortunately, his life being taken away from him for a whole year and a month now.
No, right. It doesn't even change the consequences, right? Necessarily. Yeah. But the point is simply that.
Still is a good point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you only have to be accused for them to lock you up. And he spent
69 days the first time.
Yeah, 69 days.
About 2 months. Yeah. About 2 months in a cage before, he was released pre-trial.
Even then, his life was he had an ankle monitor at times. Yep, I found this video of me and him today where he's pumping gas.
And nobody spent something like 6 months, I think, in a cage before they released him.
Yeah, nobody.
And the judge said that was illegal.
He said, "Oh wait, this might be illegal, so we're gonna let him out now. 6 months in."
Yep.
It's crazy.
It's just interesting how much people pretend that the government is serving them when we have all these regulatory things going on. It's just. The regulatory power of the state has become so massive that we forget that perhaps the regulatory power of the state is the deep state.
Yeah, I would say that more than being just something that is nebulous and you can't get to, it would be just as good to go after the regulatory bodies as anything else when you're going after quote unquote the deep state. If I got that out of my mouth in a way that other people can understand.
So I would say that we don't need to believe in skull and bones you can believe in skull and bones if you want. I tend to, but we don't need to believe in skull and bones taking over the government and putting their people in charge. We can look at the regulatory state and be like, this is the deep state right here, where all these regulatory agencies get more power than lawmakers.
And you could accomplish a lot just by getting rid of this part of the swamp.
Yep.
Not that it's all of it, really. There's just the fact that the Constitution exists, in my opinion, means there is still going to be tyrants that get attracted to it, that want to, I don't want to have to work. I'm going to be a parasite on all these people I find dumber than me.
Yeah. I don't think people really even have any concept of just how big our government has gotten over the last 100 years or so. It used to be if you went from one state to another, you were home free basically, because, the cops in Vermont couldn't come into New Hampshire, and New Hampshire cops couldn't go into Vermont. And it's just this idea that everything is, there's so much government now, and a lot of it's at the federal level because of the Interstate Commerce Act, but
and also Patriot Act.
Yep.
Also Patriot Act.
It sure seems after the Civil War, the federal government has really become more powerful.
New Hampshire didn't have a state police until like 1924 or something like that.
Wow.
I mean, just it's not to say that New Hampshire didn't have any police, but the point is it didn't have any state police, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, this idea that like, we need all this regulation and laws, we don't. It's you have a perception that we do because we do now, but there was time when we didn't have these things. There was a time when we didn't have driver's licenses or social security numbers or, license plates for the vehicles. And it's like, and if you think that like, yes, cars can be dangerous, but like there were a lot more injuries in the horse and wagon days than there are.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's like, okay, yeah, they're dangerous, but it was even worse, before we had this technology.
And before we had these cops following around all the other horse and buggies.
Right. Like how safe is, there's an economic cost to safety, and we're too safe. We're so safe that we're actually putting ourselves in danger in a lot of cases nowadays. So
it makes a lot of sense because people are so safety oriented these days.
Yeah. I mean, if you put too much money into solving all these different problems, you end up not solving any real problem when you could be investing that into curing cancer or something that actually will have a positive, a greater positive impact on society. But that's not where the money goes, because it's far easier to argue for creating lists of people because of the boogeyman, because one kid was killed or harmed 30 years ago. It's far easier to get support for that in Congress and pass laws and then have all of these police departments maintaining these databases, which has a huge cost to it, then actually think, hey, wait a minute, one person dying, yes, this was a tragic thing, but it just doesn't make sense to throw, taxpayer money into, solving a non-problem for the most part.
There is literally a law in New Hampshire called Jessica's Law. And it's named after this girl that died because, ice fell off a car in front of her and hit her and killed her.
Oh, yeah.
That car shouldn't have been... This is my idea.
Yeah.
Every time I hear that,
Yep.
the car she was in, whether she was driving or not, should not have been riding the butt of the car with the ice on it then.
Yep.
But they use that to pull people over.
Yeah. It sounds very much like the type of emotional reaction that ends up leading to huge costs to society that don't actually have any real benefit, and then in the end that money could have gone to something that maybe would have had a benefit in the long term, like curing cancer or whatever. It's there was the one that I'm thinking of, that's a perfect example what you just mentioned there. I think the one I'm thinking of was in New Jersey in the 90s. I think it was Begin's Law, and there was a girl who was I think the situation was like a 17-year-old boy or something, like murdered and like molested like a little girl, and it's like, and she came to the house or something. And now the law, it created a database of basically sex offenders, and that's how we get these sex offender laws or whatever, or at least the tracking of sex offenders, right? And it just, there was this huge cost to it, but like it never was that law would not have stopped that incident from occurring.
That's usually how it goes.
So it's like, wait a minute, hold on. It wouldn't have solved the problem that you're pushing for because of this, but it wouldn't have solved that problem. And what exactly do you think this is going to do? Knowing where these people are doesn't stop the crimes from occurring. And then the next question is, well, what's the recidivism, situation? Like there's a concept of recidivism. It's basically like, and I don't know what it is exactly with like sex offenders or different types of sex offenders, but like with different types of criminals, there's different reoffending rates. That's basically what recidivism is. And it's like, okay, you lock somebody up, what's the chance that they're going to reoffend? And like without taking that kind of information into consideration, like just passing laws based on emotion can actually have a negative impact.
Oh yeah.
So, and that's the kind of thing that, Megan's Law probably, and
the Patriot Act.
The Patriot Act is another good one. It's all based on emotion. There's no rational good reason for it. There's no science behind it.
Well, people are easily manipulated by emotion. I mean, think about the COVID pandemic. People were easily locked in their houses in many cases and told they can't go visit family because there's this big bad virus out there.
Oh yeah, and then the criminals took advantage of the whole lockdown to exploit older people.
Oh yeah.
They literally were going house to house and basically taking advantage of people with like Alzheimer's and things like that because their family wasn't
stealing from them.
Yeah, stealing from them. What they were doing was it wasn't. I don't think they were stealing from them. It was Yeah, it was sort of like stealing. What they did was they'd go and they do repairs. They tell the person with Alzheimer's, oh, the repairs are free, but then they would get billed for it, I guess, and then it would get sent to collection. It wasn't getting sent to collections. What they were doing, I think, was putting a lien on the house.
Oh my God.
And then the house would get sold at auction, and then they'd get paid that way or something like that.
Wow.
Whoa.
And because the the lien would go to the homeowner, which was the elderly person who had Alzheimer's, and there was nobody checking in on the person with Alzheimer's because they were told, well, their children would be like, I didn't want to put my mom at risk or whatever.
Get her COVID and she would definitely die.
They wouldn't go and keep an eye on their parents, and therefore, the children were thinking, well, nobody's going outside anymore because it's dangerous or whatever. So nobody would think that there would be some guy coming to the house to do repair work or
because
whatever.
Criminals totally always follow the law.
Right.
Or the rules.
Right. So there was all sorts of damage that was caused beyond, there was a whole lot of economic damage caused obviously by the policies, but it was even more than that. Than just, what you might think about it. I mean, there was, I don't know, I forget how many billions of dollars, but it was some insane amount went to corporations. And only a very tiny sliver actually went to, you and I.
We will never be 100% safe, and that is fine. You could die. You could have an asteroid hit you at any moment. It sounds crazy, but that could literally happen. An asteroid could come hit in the studio right now and kill all three of us without us moving a leg, without us being able to do something to defend ourselves against it, because we have 100% control over everything in the universe happening around us. That will never happen.
Oh, did you guys hear about the story recently where some 10-year-old was arrested for walking into town? The town was like a population of 300. It was rural area. Completely
I think
safe.
we talked about it a little bit on Free Talk Live.
It's another one of these absurd overreaction scenarios.
And luckily the mom is a great mom. She told the police, no, I'm not taking a plea deal for this. I'm not signing the thing you want me to sign. I'm not agreeing to you guys monitoring my kid for a year. They went to do some kind of GPS monitoring on the boy after
That's insane. I mean, why? Life is all about taking risk and learning how to mitigate the risks as best you can, but it's still taking a risk. I mean, I moved 3,000 miles from family, and here I am in New Hampshire, walking to downtown Keene and taking the risk of crossing a street. I mean, it's risky.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you need risk in your lives. Otherwise you end up, you don't live. You have to live life. You have to enjoy life. And if you lock your kid at home all the time, that's not living life. I mean, you're not going to learn from that. You're not going to learn to take responsibility for yourself.
Yes. The learning part is one of the biggest things. Like as a kid, I was homeschooled and I also had tons of siblings all the time. And there are so many times I meet somebody who as an adult didn't learn something. In my head, I'm like, I learned this when I was a little girl, as in social norms. Something bragging, just going oh, I did this and I'm great, and you're just thinking doesn't this person know that that is kind of rude? I learned that when I was a little kid because I got out of the house. But a lot of these people, they had parents who were helicopter parents.
Oh, yeah.
If they hung out with their friends, it had to be oh, I put this little play date together and I'm right there with you, and not letting kids fight it out, get into little kid fights, and it's the end of the world for a few moments, and then they cry it out and it's over and they've learned something. 603-283-6160 is the phone number. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Tired of the ever-inflating US dollar? You can live your life on Dash instead with some handy websites. BitRefill.com has been accepting Dash for years and has a ton of big-name retailers and brands including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Plus, many of their gift cards are available at a discount. But what about paying your bills? Spritz.finance can do that, and they can send dollars to your bank account in case you still need those for some reason. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
Free speech is protected on the internet, right? Not always. government agencies try to limit free speech and commerce on the net. Luckily, when they do, the Institute for Justice is there to defend your First Amendment right to free speech. IJ helped set the first federal precedent for internet free speech in 1999, and ever since has worked to prevent unconstitutional roadblocks in cyberspace. Visit our website today at ij.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. US President-elect Donald Trump looks set to escape trial for his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election results and for retaining classified documents after investigators filed a motion to drop the case. Special counsel Jack Smith moved to dismiss 2 criminal cases against the former president due to a long-standing Justice Department policy that bars the prosecution of a sitting president. Benji Heyer reports from Washington.
He didn't win in the courtroom, but at the ballot box, and Donald Trump's victory in 2024 all but puts to an end his legal challenges by consigning his outstanding trials to the ash heap of history, both the one dealing with the previous election, which culminated in a deadly riot on Congress, and another on his alleged hoarding of classified documents, which was dismissed by a Trump-appointed judge this summer and is also being abandoned today by the Justice Department. His sentencing in his hush money case was postponed last week following a Supreme Court ruling which grants him presidential immunity. Having largely evaded America's justice system, Trump now has a chance to weaponize it in his favor as soon as he takes office.
New reporting suggests Israel could be on the verge of a ceasefire deal with Hezbollah in Lebanon following months of fighting. An agreement could be reached as soon as Tuesday when the Israeli cabinet next meets. Our US correspondent Mitch McCann reports.
Israeli media outlets as well as the US news website Axios are reporting that both sides are moving closer to an agreement in the American-led peace talks. Over the past year, more than 3,500 Lebanese people have been killed and 15,000 injured in the fighting. Meanwhile, Hezbollah has continued to launch strikes at Israel, with heavy rockets fired across the border as recently as Sunday. Reports suggest that a draft agreement would include a 60-day transition period, during which the Israeli Defense Forces would withdraw from southern Lebanon. Hezbollah would relocate its heavy weapons north of the Litani River, and the Lebanese army would deploy closer to the border. If a deal is reached, it could allow hundreds of thousands of people on either side of the border to return home. Mitch McCann, New York.
US retailers are hoping to lure shoppers to Black Friday sales in a bid to boost consumer spending. Analysts predict the US could see subdued sales over the holiday season if shoppers continue to tighten their wallets. Sally Patterson reports from New York.
The US National Retail Federation forecasts that winter holiday sales will reach almost $1 trillion in November and December. But the rate of spending growth is expected to be the slowest the country's seen since 2018. Even though inflation is coming down, analysts say consumer spending on non-essential items remains uninspiring.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at the outcome of COP29, the climate change summit that has finished in Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan. It ended with a $1.3 trillion agreement to provide funds for developing world nations to move towards a low-carbon economy. But only $300 billion of that money will come in the form of grants and interest-free loans. The rest of the cash will rely on private investors and new levies on fossil fuel use that have not yet been agreed. Riley Ware is with Christian Aid's delegation attending the event in Baku.
We're disappointed ultimately because this was billed as the finance COP that would actually meet the needs of developing countries, both to tackle the impacts of climate change, the droughts, the floods, the storms, but also help them decarbonize their economies over the next few years. And despite this being kind of the moment where we were supposed to really mobilize the right amount of money to do that, the number is too low and it's too vague. It will come from largely loans that will just add to the debt burden of many of these poorer countries.
There were protests in the final hours of COP29 and allegations that Saudi Arabia was playing a behind-the-scenes role to alter the final text of the summit without full consultation. The event ended in a general atmosphere of recrimination and claims that it had been a missed opportunity. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. US President-elect Donald Trump looks set to escape trial for his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election result and retaining classified documents after investigators filed a motion to drop the case. New reporting suggests Israel could be on the verge of a ceasefire deal with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and US retailers are hoping to lure shoppers to Black Friday sales in a bid to boost consumer spending. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
I was doing my regular 11 o'clock security sweep around the perimeter of my house when I noticed a couple of young people having intercourse in the front seat of a car out in the street. So I ran inside and I grabbed my video camera. As you can imagine, I stood in those bushes for over 20 minutes watching these two degenerates grind against each other, and I'm thinking this behavior is simply unacceptable. Now, if you think this is an isolated incident, you are dead to rights wrong. I have 36 hours of footage to prove it that I have personally collected from sickos just around my own town. For example, I saw perverts having sex in swimming pools clearly visible from the roofs of adjacent buildings, on boats that anybody could see with a telescope, at night on the beaches where they can easily be watched by anyone hiding behind a fence wearing their night vision goggles. It's simply disgusting.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. Not your keys, not your Bitcoin is a lesson that too many people have learned the hard way. It's always best to get your crypto into a wallet that you control, but not all wallets are equal. Many of our hosts have been using Edge wallet for years to manage crypto, and there just aren't many wallets to compare. Featuring a unique login system that makes it easier for you to access your crypto from multiple devices, Edge is designed to be user-friendly. In a space that can be notoriously difficult for non-tech people, Edge is a valuable tool for novices and experts alike. You can learn more at edge.app, that's edge.app, which features a link at the top for those who wish to learn more about crypto and wallets. Thanks again to Edge for sponsoring Free Talk Live, and again, to learn more, visit edge.app. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Riley.
And Mr. Penguin.
And if you'd like to call in with whatever is on your mind, 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. You can change the subject. You can tell us what you think about what we're saying. You can tell us we're wrong. It's up to you. In the last segment, of course, we always get off into different tangents, etc., which is absolutely fine.
It is. It's fine. It's fun. It's great
fun.
Radio sometimes.
I agree. But the main topic we were talking about was DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, that's going to exist.
I wonder what this is going to do to the price of Dogecoin.
I know. I wondered that too. I would have thought that something would have happened when it got announced, and I think it did, a little bit, but not something major. Didn't turn into $1. I think its all-time high ever was in 80 cents or something. You know.
I wonder. I think it's kind of humorous that they're going to create another department in order to get rid of the departments. Like
yeah, I think it's interesting that they're. Yeah, I definitely agree, Chris. I think it's interesting that they're creating a new department just to get rid of other departments.
And
so.
they're not really. I don't even think they're saying they're going to get rid of those other departments. That's the other thing. Like it's like they're going to reduce them or something like that, maybe. But I don't know. We'll see. I guess we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. But I don't really trust these politicians. Like whether we're talking about the Democrats or Republicans, they're both liars. So we'll see what
yeah,
actually
plus
happens.
I don't like the idea of making the government more "quote unquote" efficient.
Yeah, that word is not good to me. One thing I would have thought would be better, but of course they wanted to make it Doge.
I mean, efficient is another way of saying let's remove stuff. Let's remove waste. I mean,
that's why I think simplification would have been better.
Yeah.
I mean, literally outright removing or getting rid of, I think would be great. But like, I don't necessarily like. I don't know. I don't necessarily know that's what's going to happen. At best, I think would probably more like, oh, they're going to cut people. They're going to cut 3/4 of staff maybe from each of these departments or something like that.
But I am really interested to know what they are actually proposing will happen. And they, meaning Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, wrote an opinion piece for the Wall Street Journal. And the thing is, like, we have all kinds of like, oh, we think they'll do this, we think that won't happen, blah, blah, blah. But I haven't actually had something so comprehensive of them writing out exactly what they plan to do. So I found this an interesting article Ian sent me. And by the way, Ian is in prison, and you can go to freeiannow.org. That's free, IANNOW.org, Free Ian Now, to learn why he's in prison. There's comprehensive videos, articles telling our side of the story. Ian is the founder of this show and my husband, and he's in prison serving an 8-year prison sentence for selling Bitcoin. So he's one of those people that the Biden administration definitely went after unfairly, and it seems like they went after Ian for his opinions about the government because he doesn't like them.
It was way more than just the Bitcoin. I mean, the underlying motive was political in nature, because Ian has been speaking out for 2 decades now.
I agree.
Yeah, he's been speaking out as long as I've known him, and he's active in the community.
He's the reason the Free State Project has been as successful as it has gotten, and
I agree.
Definitely,
it's actually frightened certainly what was his name, Patrick.
Is he a Free Stater?
FBI agent who's been targeting Free Staters for the last...
no, Phil Christiana.
Oh, Phil Christiana, that's it. Yeah, Phil Christiana in particular.
He's a FBI agent from Boston who made it his life to just take out Free Staters, and he tried to get nobody in prison. I mean, he did. He got nobody in jail for a year.
He was going after people before Ian moved to town.
Yep.
So there's no
he
question.
He tried to make a meeting with Dave Ridley, a caller to this show, but then Dave said, okay, we can do that, but I'm going to film it. And he said no.
Yep. Yeah, there's actual video on freekeen.com for anybody who wants to, if you do a search for it, of early attacks by Phil Christiana on early Free Staters that moved. And Ian brought Free Talk Live to New Hampshire, and he became Phil Christiana's basically #1 target because
Phil Christiana was
of how successful Ian was at bringing people to New Hampshire.
He was part of the organization behind the FBI raid on our house and the studio.
This wasn't one raid. There were multiple raids on different reasons, and reasons are always in quotes because it was always political garbage.
Yeah.
And this is in addition to raids that have nothing to do with the FBI directly. There were like police raids on the studios, like prior to the last 2 FBI raids.
3 times.
Yeah,
that's a lot of rating.
Yeah, right. Like if you ever and remember, this is a talk show. It would be akin to like a newspaper, rating a newspaper.
Yeah,
and like. Yeah, there's supposedly rules that they're supposed to do certain things before they raid a newspaper, and I really have to wonder if they didn't violate those rules with raiding Free Talk Live as well. But yeah, I don't know the details of it, but it's extremely disturbing. A talk show, raiding a talk show is just as disturbing as raiding a newspaper, if you ask me, because it's the place where people can go and actually, speak their mind about stuff. And if you intimidate people into not speaking their mind by raiding them, and then of course not even having any basis to arrest, because they didn't arrest anybody, on prior raids, because they didn't really have anything. It was entirely they were trying to scare people into
and
not
tarnish people's names with the type of
and
charges.
undermining, yep.
So you can go to freeiannow.org to learn more about that, and also sign the petition to help to persuade maybe Trump to pardon him, possibly. That would be one tool you could use to
That would be pretty epic if Trump would pardon Ian.
You can use petitions as just a tool to show it to a president. And Angela McArdle from the Libertarian Party, she's been awesome helping us with that, helping us figure out, like, okay, this is what you need if you want to get this in front of Trump. And petition is one of those things, and more signatures is better. So freeiannow.org. Thanks so much for listening. For not listening, for visiting there if you do. And in the last segment, what we were talking about before we got onto multiple different tangents was Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy's Doge and what they plan to do with it. So let's get right into it. They talked about how most legal edicts aren't laws enacted by Congress, as you learn that they're supposed to be in school. They're rules and regulations promulgated by unelected bureaucrats, tens of thousands of them each year. Most government enforcement decisions and discretionary expenditures aren't made by the democratically elected president or even his political appointees, but by millions of unelected, unappointed civil servants, government workers, within government
So-called
agencies.
civil servants.
Yeah, they wouldn't act as a servant if you found them on the street and told them what to do. Yeah.
That's for sure.
So, unappointed civil servants within government agencies who view themselves as immune from firing thanks to civil service protections. This is anti-democratic and antithetical to the founders' vision. It imposes massive direct and indirect costs on taxpayers. Thankfully, we have a historic opportunity to solve the problem. On November 5th, voters decisively elected Donald Trump with a mandate for sweeping change, and they deserve to get it. Oh, just like Obama. Change.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, exactly.
President Trump has asked the two of us, Vivek and Elon, to lead a newly formed Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, to cut the federal government down to size. Should be 0.
Yeah, right.
The entrenched and ever-growing bureaucracy represents an existential threat to our republic, and politicians have abetted it for too long. Here's the thing. Of course, they're clearly coming from more of a perspective of, like, a constitutionalist who believes that is the way things should be, and I feel more like, if anything, it should have been stopped at the states and the federal government just not existing. But I'm still for, if that's all we can get, somebody who's a constitutionalist who wants to cut a whole bunch of stuff out, and that's where they're coming from, I'm not going to spit at that. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
no
we're going to take what we get, of course, but, we as libertarians, at least I would prefer the government to be 0, like Bonnie. And, well, here's what we got. We got a group of people who want this DOGE organization to cut the government down to size. So let's hope it cuts it down to size.
I'll say that I didn't vote for Trump. Never was gonna. But I will absolutely accept anything that he can do in terms of reducing government.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. It doesn't help anybody. The larger government doesn't help anybody. It doesn't matter. Both the Republicans and the Democrats have been increasing government for hundreds of years, and it's like it just little by little it eats away at us, and but it's almost like we're blinded because of how slowly it sort of eats away, and it's just absolutely crazy what we have now versus. I mean, it's hard to imagine, like, even like a couple of decades ago, like I don't even think anybody could have imagined just the size of government that we have today.
Yep. And the other thing I like about this article is the fact that it is written from a perspective of kind of like the more common person who believes, hey, guys, let's just stick to the Constitution. Like, it's not coming from off the wall, quote unquote, type. Like, if we wrote this article and we were coming from, hey, let's get government to zero, that's not going to, like, you know, educate a lot of people. They're just going to be like, no way, and look right away, I think. So this article being on Wall Street Journal, I think a lot of just like Republicans don't hear this stuff. Like, they kind of started off with just like a little lesson on what is actually happening.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was listening to some left wing a talk show. It was 2600 for Off the Hook. Actually, it was a podcast. Well, no, actually, it's a radio show too, just like Free Talk Live. But anyway, it's a hacker. They have a hacker magazine, and anyway, point is they're coming at it from a left wing perspective. They're based out in New York, basically. And it was very interesting because a lot of the criticisms they have of Trump, I would also share, from a libertarian perspective. But at the same time, it's like other things were just like, yeah, no.
Like what? Like he's going to take away women's rights somehow.
Yeah, probably some of the, I don't know. Yeah, probably that's probably like one of them. He wants to. Well, I think one of the things they said was like about abortion and banning abortion, something like that. I would agree with them. I don't think you should be telling people what they can do with their own bodies.
Yeah, but he never said he was going to make abortion more illegal. Like, he sent it back to the states.
Yes, and I think there is a counterpoint, of course, that they're going to have left out from the left wing perspective of that he never said that. But I think what they probably
they'll bring up Project 2025 or something like that.
Yeah, I think they would probably counter that with saying yes, but he's going to be putting people into power who support that or something along those lines. And it's probably also a valid point. It would be very interesting, actually, to have somebody like Goldstein on the show, just because they're probably one of the few left-wing outlets that would actually have a conversation with libertarians.
Yeah.
Because most people on the left would just...
They can't handle new information.
They can't handle debate.
Yep.
But I don't know. I think like a lot of the technical people on the left are probably more likely to have a conversation. Whereas I think that people who are less technical on the left tend not to really be, willing to have that conversation.
Well, I love when people share different perspectives, but can at least have a conversation. It's always like actually really nice because you can learn something from them, even if it doesn't change your mind. Oh, I see where people are coming from when they say that. Yeah, I don't agree, but at least it's not just like my thought process before was, oh, everybody's crazy and dumb who thinks that. And now I'm like, okay, I see where you're coming from. And this is why I disagree. Now you can make a better argument for what your thoughts.
Yeah, having an intellectual conversation. And it's funny. It's like that's kind of like the foundation of America, but at the same time, it's like it's something we never actually do. So it would be very interesting to actually
the
have
founders
something.
would get together and argue about stuff and get really mad at each other.
Yeah, I think that would be the case under other circumstances, but I think the more technical leaning left versus the libertarian crowd is actually going to be probably more nuanced and have an actual like debate or discussion.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think libertarians tend to lean more, probably lean more in the technical or scientific kind of direction, and I think people on the left generally don't. But the people who are on the left that are more technically inclined still are more in line with libertarians.
If you're technically inclined, you have to at least be in some respect locked in on the solidity of nature. This is how a thing works.
Yeah.
But if you're just a social commentator on the left, you don't have to be locked into any aspect of reality.
Yep.
So that would be my guess.
And I think when we're having debates, right? Like if you have a Republican against a Democrat or something along those lines, it's really more about emotion, right? They're not really having a debate. They're arguing emotional stuff. It's drama. It's not, yeah.
It's reality TV essentially.
Exactly.
It's the American soap opera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I think it would probably be fairly interesting to have some libertarians. And
well, there's a listener who got, and he's also a caller, Kadu. He got his favorite flat earther, so seemingly unrelated topic, type of show. He got him to look at Free Talk Live, and I don't think the actual YouTuber himself called in, but he got all his fans to call in. So like you could maybe get this guy, the tech guy you're talking about, to call in or look into it.
Yeah, Goldstein, Emmanuel Goldstein is probably would be a good person to have on. He's definitely from the left side.
And anyone can call in, it doesn't have to be like a whole thing. Just
We don't have to have a guest necessarily. You can call into the show.
Yeah. Well, let's get back into this article from what they're saying they're going to do. I haven't gotten into they kind of did a little lesson so far, and that's nice, especially for people who just don't know anything about it. If you've been like attacked by the federal agencies, the big, huge suitcases of regulations, more like dump trucks of regulations that they'll throw at you.
Yeah, there's so many regulations out there.
Like library getting their business shut down. That's just one example. These people shutting down businesses over like semantics because they don't want that business to exist. That is just one example of the government costing us money having that entrepreneur in court at all, taking down businesses that employed people and were wanted by the market just because of, like semantics, like library.
Okay.
That's just one reason that they cost you money with their regulations. And there's tons of other ones. So that's what I was going to say. If you've ever been attacked by them with their regulations, then you definitely know about it. If it's just never affected you, then you're less likely to know about it.
See, here's the thing. I think most people are affected by these regulations. They just don't know how they're affected by these regulations.
And that's a good point. Yeah.
If they are able to, say, attack library and are effectively able to shut it down, well, you can't use library anymore, whether or not you know why you can't use library anymore. Mm-hmm. Same thing with something like Napster or maybe LimeWire. You might not know why it went away, but you can't benefit from it anymore.
Yep, and you wouldn't know it had anything to do with regulations that the quality of your life went down if you never found LimeWire or Napster. And then one day you're thinking, oh, I need a way to go download music, but I don't want to spend a lot of money. And then you can't find anything like that. So you would never know how that regulation touched your life. So that's a really good point.
I remember Napster being really big in the late 90s, early aughts, and hearing about them being shut down. So,
yep.
I mean, regulation does come into play a lot. I mean, we have computers in this room, we have refrigerators in our houses, and regulations affect those things.
Yep. So they said President Trump has asked the two of us to lead a newly formed Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, to cut the federal government down to size. The entrenched and ever-growing bureaucracy represents an existential threat to our republic, and politicians have abetted it for too long. That's why we're doing things differently. We are entrepreneurs, not politicians. We will serve as outside volunteers, not federal employees or officials. I didn't know they weren't getting like an official position. Interesting. Unlike government commissions or advisory committees, we won't just write reports or cut ribbons, we'll cut costs. We are assisting the Trump transition team to identify and hire a lean team of small government crusaders, including some of the sharpest technical and legal minds in America. This team will work in the new administration closely with the White House Office of Management and Budget. The two of us will advise DOGE at every step to pursue three major kinds of reform: regulatory rescissions, never even seen that word, administrative reductions, and cost savings. We will focus particularly on driving change through executive action based on existing legislation rather than by passing new laws. Our North Star for reform will be the U.S. Constitution, with a focus on two critical Supreme Court rulings issued during President Biden's tenure. In West Virginia versus Environmental Protection Agency in 2022, the justices held that agencies can't impose regulations dealing with major economic or policy questions unless Congress specifically authorizes them to do so. So isn't that the major question doctrine? Either way, it's pretty similar. Interesting. In Loper Bright versus Raimundo, 2024, the court overturned the Chevron doctrine and held that federal courts should no longer defer to federal agencies' interpretations of the law or their own rulemaking authority. Together, these cases suggest that a plethora of current federal regulations exceed the authority Congress has granted under the law. And what's cool and interesting about this is the fact that, Chevron doctrine was really bad and it was overturned, but that isn't affecting us very much yet, because the only way that these regulations that have been harming people all these times can get overturned, even though Chevron was overturned, is by somebody getting charged with something and then challenging it. So that would be a long, slow process. So if they can speed this up a little bit, sounds good to me.
I agree.
It'll be another 20 years before anything happens.
It's Free Talk Live. More coming up, 603-283-6160. More coming up, it's Free Talk Live.
After vetting the 37-year-old for factors such as looks, screen presence, and film credits, Hollywood insiders unanimously agreed this week that area man Dennis Kiernan lacks the sheer star power necessary to carry a major motion picture. Industry experts spoke to reporters today about the Charlottesville, Virginia resident, who they say just doesn't have what it takes to crack into the A-list.
Love him or hate him, I think we can all agree that Dennis Kiernan is not a bankable star. He's got to have sex appeal, talent, charisma, and most importantly, that X factor. I should want to sleep with Dennis. I should want to be Dennis. Do I want to be Dennis? No.
Experts agreed the Virginia native and father of one does not have the widespread appeal required to secure a distribution deal with wide release, while also saying they had no reason to believe Kiernan would ever be capable of delivering the type of powerhouse performance that generates buzz at Sundance, Cannes, or Comic-Con.
This is the Onion News Network.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. US President-elect Donald Trump looks set to escape trial for his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election results and for retaining classified documents after investigators filed a motion to drop the case. Special counsel Jack Smith moved to dismiss 2 criminal cases against the former president due to a long-standing Justice Department policy that bars the prosecution of a sitting president. Benji Heyer reports from Washington.
He didn't win in the courtroom, but at the ballot box, and Donald Trump's victory in 2024 all but puts to an end his legal challenges by consigning his outstanding trials to the ash heap of history, both the one dealing with the previous election, which culminated in a deadly riot on Congress, and another on his alleged hoarding of classified documents, which was dismissed by a Trump-appointed judge this summer and is also being abandoned today by the Justice Department. His sentencing in his hush money case was postponed last week following a Supreme Court ruling which grants him presidential immunity. Having largely evaded America's justice system, Trump now has a chance to weaponize it in his favor as soon as he takes office.
New reporting suggests Israel could be on the verge of a ceasefire deal with Hezbollah in Lebanon following months of fighting. An agreement could be reached as soon as Tuesday when the Israeli cabinet next meets. Our US correspondent Mitch McCann reports.
Israeli media outlets as well as the US news website Axios are reporting that both sides are moving closer to an agreement in the American-led peace talks. Over the past year, more than 3,500 Lebanese people have been killed and 15,000 injured in the fighting. Meanwhile, Hezbollah has continued to launch strikes at Israel, with heavy rockets fired across the border as recently as Sunday. Reports suggest that a draft agreement would include a 60-day transition period, during which the Israeli Defense Forces would withdraw from southern Lebanon. Hezbollah would relocate its heavy weapons north of the Litani River, and the Lebanese army would deploy closer to the border. If a deal is reached, it could allow hundreds of thousands of people on either side of the border to return home. Mitch McCann, New York.
US retailers are hoping to lure shoppers to Black Friday sales in a bid to boost consumer spending. Analysts predict the US could see subdued sales over the holiday season if shoppers continue to tighten their wallets. Sally Patterson reports from New York.
The US National Retail Federation forecasts that winter holiday sales will reach almost $1 trillion in November and December. But the rate of spending growth is expected to be the slowest the country's seen since 2018. Even though inflation is coming down, analysts say consumer spending on non-essential items remains uninspiring.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160 is the phone number you can call to bring up whatever's on your mind, and Free Talk Live is brought to you by LibertyMinded.com. Official Free Talk Live gear like t-shirts and hoodies are available at LibertyMinded.com. Plus, you'll find a unique collection of cool and funny liberty-oriented clothing at LibertyMinded.com. That's LibertyMinded.com. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Riley.
And Mr. Penguin.
And that number again, if you'd like to call in with whatever's on your mind, is 603-283-6160. And we were reading part of what we're just really getting into the meat and potatoes of what Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are claiming they're going to do with DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. But first, I think we should go to the phone calls and you guys' thoughts. Jet, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Are you on the air?
Yeah. Why?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Wait, why did you ask if
All
we're
right.
on the air?
Well, because isn't this like some odd day of the week?
Oh, well, Arya and Chris always do Mondays. I'm not normally on Mondays. You scared me that, like, I
Okay.
don't know, something wasn't streaming. or
We have
somewhere.
a bit of a switch up today. That's all. I'm on though. I'm usually on Mondays.
Okay, I was just calling in because I didn't know, but since I saw you on YouTube and you said a couple things that I have interest in, I thought I'll see if you're on the air, and you are. So
We are. We're live.
Yeah. Well, you were talking a little bit about Ian and freeing him, but my feeling has always been, aren't cages for wild animals and otherwise people who are a physical danger to others?
That should be the case.
But Ian is dangerous to everybody. He's stealing money from people. He's a scam artist,
my
don't you
God.
know?
That's
Yeah,
what
but,
the government thinks. I don't even
I
think they
suppose
really
you
think
can't-
that.
I don't even think the government thinks that. I think they
Right.
they know they're just making it up.
Oh yeah, they've got
It's
to.
a story. It's literally a story that they
Of
know they're
course.
telling, and they just keep changing their story because
put on a show.
We keep calling him out, and it's like they get interviewed and like they get questioned, and then they're like, "Oh no, the church may have started as a real thing, but it became something that was criminal or fake or something." And I'm like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah,
You
I
were
remember
literally
that
saying
kind
it
of-
was fake, and yet it started like many, many years before any of the Bitcoin stuff ever happened. Sales anyway.
Well, I'm thinking with electronic monitors and that, of course, that you can't put electronic muzzle on somebody, I suppose. So they're really afraid that he's going to speak out, I guess.
Yeah, I guess they kind of have put an electronic muzzle on him via keeping him from being able to speak out.
Yeah, that's what they do. They when they don't like what somebody is saying, and they want to muzzle you, they throw them in prison because it's and if you do what they don't want you to say, if you say from prison what they don't want you to say, then you go into I'm trying to think what it's called. It's like communication management, some sort of communication management program. I don't know if you guys remember more about it than I do, but it basically is a way to silence people.
Yeah, the communication management unit is a it's like, oh, I'm in high security prison, I'm in low security, and then you can also get some to the communications management unit, which is where a Nazi that used to live in New Hampshire, or maybe he still does, I don't know, named Chris Cantwell got sent to because, oh, he threatened another Nazi, and that is such a danger. They had to put him in prison for 2 years and keep him from being able to speak. So, like, I get to talk to Ian on the phone pretty often, not currently because of just, like, specifically they're quote-unquote in trouble right now for, like, vapes and phones keep being found at the prison, which honestly really pisses me off. It's like, I don't know. It annoys me that people are fine with everyone being punished just because they want to have a vape. That's crazy. Like, some of these people have to be, like, serious losers in there. But maybe they don't have visitors or anyone on the outside cares about them. So what do they care? They want to, like, get a vape. But at the same time, it shouldn't be the case that the government's allowed to punish 60 people for one person's thing.
Exactly.
It's such a barbaric
It is.
thing to do. Like what is wrong with you?
Mm-hmm. And it's what they do in public schools.
They
People
do.
think it's fine.
Yep. I was always like, wait, what? You want to punish everybody?
Me too.
I once had a I think she was a vice principal yell at a class of 2,000 students in a gymnasium because a couple of students came in after the time they were supposed to. Because basically the school had to have like a certain number of kids in attendance by a certain time, and so the like senior class was allowed to come in later, and but because a couple kids came in after that time, there wouldn't be enough students in the school for it to count as a school day, like under the law.
Yeah,
and so
they're not going to get their money.
Right, and it was like she yelled at the entire class because of a couple students that didn't come in when they were supposed to. It was like, wait a minute, hold on. I came in when I was supposed to. What are you yelling at me for? You know?
Kind of stuff happens to me all the time.
It's so wrong. It's so that's such a wrong thing. It's like you shouldn't be punishing people who've literally done what you asked.
Yeah, did nothing wrong. And it's exactly what you said. It's barbaric. And I also think like handcuffs are only for slaves or, people who are an immediate threat to everyone else and you're trying to physically remove them in self-defense of yourself or in defense of other people.
The badge heavies want to make themselves look powerful by bringing out the manacles and the handcuffs and things like that because they want to assert their dominance and claim that you are their slaves. You're their property now.
It gets even funnier when you are only yelling or punishing the people who actually did what you asked. And this also happens.
Yep.
It's like how can you yell like and that was a good example like in the auditorium. She was yelling literally at the kids who showed up on time because the kids who showed up late weren't there. So it's like wait a minute.
I feel like the idea, which is not like, this doesn't make it right or anything, but I feel like the idea is just like in the military. My parents were both in the military, and they told me that in like, when you're like in, what's it called, boot camp, I don't even remember at this point, the way that they like train you to all think with a hive mind and obey, is they punish in groups. So like if one person even like does bad on their running, like, you have to run a mile, let's say, one person does bad, like everybody else is doing extra laps as quote punishment because that will incentivize that person like, I don't want the group mad at me on top of me being in trouble because like a lot of people, I think that if they just got in trouble, they had to do the extra laps, maybe it wouldn't be as bad to them because they don't have this extra social pressure on them. So it just incentivizes people to think as a group. That's what they do in the military. It's literal mind control.
Like they want to divide you so that they can't like gang up on you. Like it's a psychological. Oh yeah, it's psychologically messed up. like how they work.
Anything else, Jet? I feel like you have more to say.
Oh yeah, always have more to say. In regard to the last conversation, I was in two branches of the military in my early years. And first time it was kind of fun. I had long hair and I didn't want them to, give me trouble about it or give them to shut it off. So I cut it off myself and shaved down my head. So when I got to boot camp, they made me a squad leader.
That's
thinking that I was gung ho, ready to go.
Oh, I see.
Anyway, what happened was I ended up telling all the guys, say, hey, you got to understand that this is just kind of fun and games for these people, and if you just kind of take it that way and you play along, you don't have to think a certain way or act a certain way. You just have to kind of play along to get through this 6 weeks.
I feel like that is also how people get through public school because, like, people whose parents know that it's propaganda. Like, my parents absolutely knew that. They homeschooled us from the beginning, but then we were like, we want to go to school with our friends, and, like, they allowed it for a few years. My parents would tell us, like, just so you know, it's all propaganda. And so, like, I didn't get that badly propagandized even in the years I went to public school because it's like, I'd be, like, doing my homework and be like, yep, this is clearly propaganda right here. It's like, at least you can know what you're dealing with.
Do you remember reading 5th grade history like textbooks and going like, yeah, this is such nonsense?
Fifth grade specifically, no. More like
I do. I remember
ninth.
going through fifth grade and reading the history textbooks, and I'm like, this is not how things like went down.
History
like, there's no way.
was harder for me than like, oh, we have this worksheet we have to work on that's all about how global warming is so bad. I would be like, no.
Did you
it's
guys
all
have? You're probably too young for this, but they used to have this program called DARE, like
Yeah, I
Keep
had
Kids Off
DARE.
Drugs. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, my
yeah.
God.
I believed them about DARE.
I was
Oh,
literally the
yeah.
only kid who didn't show up to like my DARE graduation because it wasn't during school hours. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to that.
I didn't have any crap like that, luckily, but
Yeah.
I completely believed it. I was like, oh my God, that's so scary. The only thing that can sober a drunk person is time. What if I end up drunk one time or one day and I can't sober myself? It's all so stupid. Like they
all
they
I was
scare
thinking
you.
was during the whole thing, like during these whatever the cop would come into the classroom, was thinking is, yeah, and in like a year from now, all these kids in here are going to be drunk, high, and like, and yet I looked to my right and my left, and I'm like, you actually believe this nonsense? Like it's like I could never understand don't you don't you guys have like brothers and friends like older like they're older, like they're not doing this, they're doing the opposite of what this guy is saying, right? Like
You're just ahead of your time though, Chris, because like most people
Yeah.
your age didn't think that much.
Oh, I know
remember-
they didn't, but it was yeah.
I remember having drug-free weeks when I was in elementary school.
And the funny thing is, I was the exact opposite. Like I never really,
wanted to drink.
Right, like I never did. I did drink. So I drank as an opposition when I was like 11. Like I had a couple beers, but like besides that, I never. I know. Well, right.
One more topic.
But yeah, it was just like But by the time I actually got to a point where it's like, okay, now everybody's drinking and doing drugs and stuff, I'm like, yeah, not that interesting.
Yeah.
Jet has more to say, it sounds like.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I mean, I also heard you talk about Christianity, so I wanted to throw in a couple things there. As you might be aware, I'm a dedicated follower of Christ. So, but I came there not from just a blind faith, but actually being shown, how I have been taken care of, all my life in different situations. And actually, when I became born again, one could say that I was approached or visited by angels who forced me to the floor. Now, Bible does tell us that, many are called, but few are chosen. And in that respect, I guess, and in reflection of my life, to be able to show how I was taken care of, that I was one of those chosen. What it means is everyone has an opportunity, but few will actually take up that opportunity. Now, I've been talking about being muzzled. I've been muzzled at church, at Bible study, that kind of thing, because everyone wants to lean on these small passages that somehow to them indicate that government is next to God, that kind of crap. And so I show them various things in the way of logic and, of course, references, both Old and New Covenant, to show them that there's nothing else that supports this except in your mind. So I ended up being kicked out of, like I said, Bible studies and told not to attend certain churches, big mega churches, that kind of thing, because
That kind of stuff happened to my
because I
parents too. It's like the people who get too free thinking in some churches, like, oh, that can't happen. They get not necessarily kicked out, like, hey, don't come back here. I don't know about your story, Jet, but my parents just got kind of like, yeah, we're gonna separate from this, and sometimes them and some other people would separate and start doing their own church.
Yeah, it was quite a surprise to me, because it was simply a matter of I was chatting with someone someday and told them about this software project I created. Actually, I created this thing called mybuds.com. It's not functioning now, but it was a precursor of MySpace and Facebook.
I've never heard of that one. Mybuds.com. Did you?
Yeah, it never really got traction. I was using it on a small base. My wife worked for the airline, so I was using it as an internal type of social networking thing. But I got because I was talking about that, and the individual who it turns out was part of the church's hierarchy, administration, whatever you want to call it. He got confused about what I was saying, about how I was describing how databases work.
Like over text?
Interaction. No, this is on a phone call, for example. And I got a call then from the small groups leader and says, I just talked to somebody who said that that you had confused them in your discussion. And I'm going, well, I'm happy to clarify. And they said, well, we're going to ask you not to speak to anyone in the church anymore.
Wow.
I don't like people that can't handle, new information or having their belief challenged.
Well, and of course, I have all kinds of what you might call the apologetics or logistics. To be able to show that these things that they are professing and believing are correct. Things like about tithing and about obedience to government and that kind of thing, because it's very easy for anyone who knows anything about logic to show that these things that they believe cannot be true. So that's been my approach. And when I suggested that one who was a son of the person in a Bible group was going to go over to Iraq, I simply asked the question. I would be asking if he prayed to the Holy Spirit and asked him for direction to see if this is something he should do.
Now you're unpatriotic and not in the group think of the church.
Yeah.
What was that?
I said, now he's going to think of you as unpatriotic on top of, not being a part of group think.
Yeah, but the thing was, like I said, I've been in the military twice, and of course I didn't go through to retire or anything like that. But yeah, the situation was I just suggested that this is not something that Jesus would probably be proud of, or that God Himself would promote.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very strange, that it turns out, in my estimation, that only about 8% of those people who profess Christianity in the church, I'm not talking about just those outside the church as well, but only about 8%, really don't care anything about, the 8% do care about what Jesus has to say and how to apply it to their life. It's the other 92% that just go to church for a variety of reasons, like social networking, or just not to be lonely at home, or to feel good somehow. They're not there to really learn, about Christ and how He wants us to apply His principles to His life and that kind of thing. So
I think the worst is when people just want to be like climb up in social status. Those were always the worst people. It's like you're not even interested in like the theological conversations, like were always interesting to me at the very least, or not just theological, like, oh, what the Bible verse says here, what do you think that means? But like existential questions, more importantly. Like I don't understand people who are like, oh, I'm not interested in that at all. Whatever the pastor says, yeah, but anyways, I'm running the blah 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 fundraiser and I'm like a big shot because of that. I don't like people who try to get ahead using churches, and if you know what I mean, if you've ever experienced
how
people
do you
like
expect
that.
to become president, Bonnie, if you don't
It'd be
become
horrible at that. I'm not like a type A, like I'm like, oh, you don't agree with me? Well, I don't care. Like, I'm not like try to force someone to like me, try to force someone to agree with me. It's like, I'll put my opinions out there. If you don't like me, if you don't like it,
all right.
I think that's type A. I don't know if I'm describing that right, but yeah, that would get really annoying and old in a church. Just people don't want to have an actual conversation with you. They just get mad at you if you disagree with them, especially political things. Like, oh, imagine how annoying it probably was. And thank you for the call, Jet. During like 2020, if you're in church and the other people, like, they are masky and you don't want to, and they're trying to argue with you about that. Oh, that would get so old. I felt so bad for kids that were in public school during 2020 and on,
Didn't they shut the schools down? I mean, weren't the churches shut down? That like most of them anyway.
I don't think most of them. I don't think so.
I thought they shut the schools and the churches down.
They didn't shut every single church and school down. Like,
well,
especially
not in New
United
Hampshire,
States.
maybe, but like outside of New Hampshire.
They didn't shut my parents down in Utah, but they were wearing masks.
Okay.
Which is, oh my God, just crazy. Imagine having to get in a conversation with somebody and one of your church elders is like, "You're going to get my grandma sick. You're going to be responsible for getting my grandma sick." Or the other thing is, like, the schools did close, but they weren't closed the whole time because there were definitely lots of kids that had to go to school with masks on. So imagine you're in a high schooler. Yeah.
Yeah, there were
and maybe
definitely
I'm thinking
schools
more
with
2021 at that point.
Maybe. I'm not sure
2021 was definitely a big 2020 and 21 were big masking years, I think, and then the masks came off and they were trying to force everybody to take the vaccine.
I'm just glad I was like really on my own. Like, I was doing Uber Eats. Like, I quit my job to do Uber Eats during 2020. I didn't have anyone I had to like go meet up with regularly, and I have to listen to their opinions on whether or not I should wear a mask and get like lectured to like that. I really like purposely pulled out of everything, really. So I was just saying, imagine being like in a church or a public school and you have to hear like other like low IQ kids in your grade being like, "I heard the virus lives for 200 days on flat surfaces." Just stupid crap like that was getting said.
Were people really saying that kind
I
of
made
stuff?
up the 200 days. I don't remember exactly how.
I can't even imagine a kid in a school going like, "It lives on surfaces for 200 days."
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, just seems like so not likely.
No, I do think arguments like that were
In
happening.
the schools.
Like, if somebody, imagine if you were a kid who could think for yourself and you're like, "I don't want to wear the mask."
I feel like
Other kids
you would have been
making you stay in line.
ostracized like to no end if you were like doing that.
Which side?
I don't know, talking about like how germs live on the surface for 200 days. Like, like if you had that conversation with your friends amongst like your, like,
That's the thing. Things are really messed up from how they used to be. Even when I was in school, people weren't super cool for being like hall monitors. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't.
When was being a hall monitor ever cool?
I didn't literally have hall monitors. That's just an example. Like,
yeah.
I mean, that's just a figure speech. Like, nowadays, kids are more like cool for being like teacher pets hall monitors. It's so stupid. But
Really?
I had heard about it from my younger siblings.
How young?
Pretty
I mean, are we
often.
talking about like elementary school?
No, high
lower?
school.
I'm sorry, I don't believe this. I think
You
this
don't
is.
have
I
to
think
talk sales with
whoever you're speaking to, if this is your family or whatever, they're delusional.
No, I don't. I think you are because
They're out of touch with reality.
this was happening everywhere. If what you were saying was true, then people would just took their masks off. People were like being bullied. Like, you're putting me in danger. And this is the thing, you weren't even in, like, I was in San Antonio during 2020, not New Hampshire the whole entire time. Actually, I went to 19 different states in 2020, and New Hampshire was extremely lax. Like, extremely lax. I came here and I was like, it's a whole new world. Things are like normal out here.
A whole new world.
I got called the C word at a Walmart by just some grown man that walked by me. I purposely would do this thing where I would walk in with a mask because you had to. A cop would be there telling you to go get a mask out of your car if you wanted to come into the Walmart. But then when I went inside, I would get on the phone and I would always just like move the mask below my chin. And for some reason, if I was on the phone, I could just be like, yeah, blah, 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 this about my day, that about my day. It's my friend. And nobody would say anything to me. And this guy looked right at me and was like, said the C word at me. And I was like, seriously? But then he like keeps walking too. Like, you wouldn't actually do anything, loser, but
yeah,
that's how people were acting. They were like, you're putting my life at risk, and I'm black, so I'm at more risk, or I'm older, I have a grandma I'm taking, I'm immunocompromised. I'm saying not
COVID was an interesting time of division between the people, that's for sure.
And also flip-flopping roles where people think they're cool, like because they're a gas station manager and they can kick you out for not wearing masks.
Yeah.
Hall monitors. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. More of your calls coming up. And you can call 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up.
Very few people would disagree with the fact that anything not prohibited by the U.S. Constitution is certainly legal. Even if the U.S. Constitution were a contract, we could simply point to the countless examples over the past century of the federal government violating the Constitution with increasing severity. And we know that the most fundamental tenet of contract law is severability. The concept that if one party violates a contract with willful intent and does not immediately correct the violation, the other party is totally within its rights to void the entire contract. Once the federal government passed the massive National Firearms Act, which clearly violated the Constitution's Second Amendment protection of the right to keep and bear arms without infringement, any state could have walked away from the Union with good reason, according to universal contract law. You can learn more about how we can peacefully divorce D.C. at NHindependence.org and join the movement at NHexit.us.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. US President-elect Donald Trump looks set to escape trial for his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election results and for retaining classified documents after investigators filed a motion to drop the case. Special counsel Jack Smith moved to dismiss 2 criminal cases against the former president due to a long-standing Justice Department policy that bars the prosecution of a sitting president. Benji Heyer reports from Washington.
He didn't win in the courtroom, but at the ballot box, and Donald Trump's victory in 2024 all but puts to an end his legal challenges by consigning his outstanding trials to the ash heap of history, both the one dealing with the previous election, which culminated in a deadly riot on Congress, and another on his alleged hoarding of classified documents, which was dismissed by a Trump-appointed judge this summer and is also being abandoned today by the Justice Department. His sentencing in his hush money case was postponed last week following a Supreme Court ruling which grants him presidential immunity. Having largely evaded America's justice system, Trump now has a chance to weaponize it in his favor as soon as he takes office.
New reporting suggests Israel could be on the verge of a ceasefire deal with Hezbollah in Lebanon following months of fighting. An agreement could be reached as soon as Tuesday when the Israeli cabinet next meets. Our US correspondent Mitch McCann reports.
Israeli media outlets as well as the US news website Axios are reporting that both sides are moving closer to an agreement in the American-led peace talks. Over the past year, more than 3,500 Lebanese people have been killed and 15,000 injured in the fighting. Meanwhile, Hezbollah has continued to launch strikes at Israel, with heavy rockets fired across the border as recently as Sunday. Reports suggest that a draft agreement would include a 60-day transition period, during which the Israeli Defense Forces would withdraw from southern Lebanon. Hezbollah would relocate its heavy weapons north of the Litani River, and the Lebanese army would deploy closer to the border. If a deal is reached, it could allow hundreds of thousands of people on either side of the border to return home. Mitch McCann, New York.
US retailers are hoping to lure shoppers to Black Friday sales in a bid to boost consumer spending. Analysts predict the US could see subdued sales over the holiday season if shoppers continue to tighten their wallets. Sally Patterson reports from New York.
The US National Retail Federation forecasts that winter holiday sales will reach almost $1 trillion in November and December. But the rate of spending growth is expected to be the slowest the country's seen since 2018. Even though inflation is coming down, analysts say consumer spending on non-essential items remains uninspiring.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail detail today at the outcome of COP29, the climate change summit that has finished in Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan. It ended with a $1.3 trillion agreement to provide funds for developing world nations to move towards a low-carbon economy. But only $300 billion of that money will come in the form of grants and interest-free loans. The rest of the cash will rely on private investors and new levies on fossil fuel use that have not yet been agreed. Riley Ware is with Christian Aid's delegation attending the event in Baku.
We're disappointed ultimately because this was billed as the finance COP that would actually meet the needs of developing countries, both to tackle the impacts of climate change, the droughts, the floods, the storms, but also help them decarbonise their economies over the next few years. And despite this being kind of the moment where we were supposed to really mobilise the right amount of money to do that, the number is too low and it's too vague. It will come from largely loans that will just add to the debt burden of many of these poorer countries.
There were protests in the final hours of COP29 and allegations that Saudi Arabia was playing a behind-the-scenes role to alter the final text of the summit without full consultation. The event ended in a general atmosphere of recrimination and claims that it had been a missed opportunity. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. US President-elect Donald Trump looks set to escape trial for his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election result and retaining classified documents after investigators filed a motion to drop the case. New reporting suggests Israel could be on the verge of a ceasefire deal with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and US retailers are hoping to lure shoppers to Black Friday sales in a bid to boost consumer spending. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
Readers rejoice! This week, Amazon unveiled the Kindle Flair, the latest model of their popular e-reader. The improved device has the ability to loudly and repeatedly announce the title of the book you're reading so everyone knows how smart you are.
Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut.
The hot new e-reader includes a massive catalog of titles, a sleek, easy-to-use interface, and a loud, clear voice that barks the name and author of your book on a loop. Amazon says the repetitive shouting is a small feature that makes a big difference. Readers say that with crystal clear 150 decibel stereo speakers, the Flair provides the most conspicuous reading experience yet. When you're not reading, the Flair automatically switches into bookshelf mode, which conserves power and reads off a list of everything on your Kindle.
Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, a confederacy of dunces.
And Amazon's competition has also stepped up their game as Apple released a new iPad that whispers, "I have an iPad," over and over again.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160, and I'd like to thank Brody for being an amplifier with us here at Free Talk Live. That means that Brody went to amps.freetalklive.com and signed up to support the show. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. Thanks to Brody and everyone who supports us. And again, that's amps.freetalklive.com if you'd like to check out the perks and benefits of becoming an amplifier. We really do appreciate everyone who supports us. Thank you again to Brody. And with you on Free Talk Live, you have me, Bonnie.
Riley.
And Mr. Penguin.
And we already have callers on the line.
Excellent.
So I'm going to go to your guys' phone calls and thoughts. David in New Mexico, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Power, Bonnie, power, and its abuse.
Electric, solar.
Yeah, all of that, but not tonight. Tenants, Bonnie, tenants.
Penance?
Tenants. No.
Tenants.
No N. Tenants.
Oh, tenants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, you said no N.
Tenets are, pardon?
You said there's no N?
No N. Tenets.
Tenets.
So just one N?
Yeah.
No N. Tenets. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're correct. I'm
I
wrong.
was like, wait, you're confusing me right now. Yeah, okay, I see. I was
we're all
doing two
confused.
N's, so I was saying tenants. So I think it's tenets. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, just like pundits.
Pundit.
All right, so where are we going with this?
Well, it's what everybody should have learned in public school if they had gone to private school.
What they should have learned at public school if they had gone to private school, I don't think that makes sense.
Yeah, well, it's a yogiism.
Oh.
You know what a yogiism, right? You know what a yogiism is. You don't? Ask Chris. Does Chris know what a yogi is? I know Riley does.
Oh boy.
Do you, Riley?
I should know what it is. I don't recall though.
Is it something a yogi will say to make their student think?
Are you referring to a kids show like back in like the 80s
Yogi
or 90s?
Bear?
Yeah, like.
Well, the kid show was named after him. I mean, the character was named after.
Okay. You're going way too far back for me to recall or know what you're talking about.
I know Yogi Bear is a thing. Hey baby, hey booby. Wait, what did he call the other one? Say hey baby.
Boo-boo.
Oh boo boo.
Hey,
There we
boo-boo.
go. I said
Go
booby.
get a picnic basket.
Oh, so he said picnic and I said tenant.
Picnic.
Mm.
Tenant.
Not the same.
Yogi is the uncle of a fellow pilot I flew with at the airline, Yogi Berra.
Somebody texted me to say that one of I'm not gonna say who because that's just mean to pick on them, but one of our other hosts that isn't on right now, a caller texted me to say a pet peeve. The correct pronunciation for Roundup is glyphosate, and I did train myself to say glyphosate correctly for a while, but they were saying glyphosate, so I kept saying glyphosate. And then another one is fentanyl, not fentanyl. Yeah, that's another thing that gets pronounced wrong a lot, is like calling it fentanyl, but it's actually fentanyl. But that's such a barely there difference. I feel like I probably say either or. all the time.
There are so many words that like.
Oh my God,
If you do like some sort of talk show or podcast or something like that like you end up like you read them and you know what they mean, but like you've never had to pronounce it, and then like you have to go to pronounce it on like because you're talking about it on air, and it's like, how do you pronounce this?
And then it's going to specifically be someone's like pet peeve
right?
as well. Like
right. You gotta have what's the word I'm looking for? But yeah, you gotta be like, you gotta really
know your vocabulary.
Not just that, but like you gotta have I probably can't say the word on air. But yeah, like you gotta have some steel in order to not, to because you can have critics right and left when you do any kind of when you're any kind of on air kind of personality.
Honestly, I like getting corrected on something like that. Like maybe next time I'll think about tenets instead of tenants, because like I feel a lot better when I'm sure that I'm pronouncing things correctly. Like Mark corrected me only like 2 years ago that I was saying espresso instead of espresso, and now I feel like, oh, I'm glad that he even before the song came out.
So you were saying
song
espresso, EX,
yeah,
as opposed to espresso.
Yeah, it's spelled ES. Well, maybe it's SS. I don't know, but it doesn't have an X in it at all. And I was saying, I don't know. I've never had an espresso.
You know what's really funny is the one I always get, I always mess up is it Ethernet or Ethernet?
I think it's Ethernet cable, right?
It is. It's Ethernet, but it's ETHERNET.
You're right. Like it could totally be Ethernet.
And I always thought it was Ethernet, and it's wrong. And as somebody who's technical, but I never heard it growing up. Like nobody ever said it.
Like you were reading it, and not
up until
it.
up until a few years ago, I was pronouncing it wrong, and like somebody would say something or whatever. But like most people when I would say it didn't know the word anyway, so it didn't matter. But then somebody's saying it correctly, and it's like, oh, I should probably start saying it correctly too.
I should probably start that.
So let me get on a power trip and go back to the discussion of power and its abuse. But first of all, to finish up yogiism, Yogi Berra, he's famous for like when you get to the fork in the road, take it. You heard that one?
No. Oh, well, I guess that's like a saying, yeah. But
yeah, well, Yogi said it.
Okay.
Well, I don't really get it because if it's a fork, you still have to. Oh, I see. The joke is that like he gives advice, but it's not actually good at it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like
take it because you could either go left or
like,
right. So.
Yeah,
On going to a certain restaurant, nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded.
So like it's kind of a oxymoron on top of that.
Yeah, exactly. And
That's
so anyway, that's
funny. I feel like I would totally, like you would totally just actually hear someone say that. You want to go there? Nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded. That's probably something that came out of someone's mouth. You know.
Too many people come to our
They're
social
like,
Sundays.
Well, you know what I mean.
What about social Sundays, Riley?
Oh, I was just saying we have too many people coming to our social Sunday events. We need to
fill up the restaurant that nobody else can fit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really popular.
It's not really too many people. It varies. Sometimes it has dry spells.
Yeah, it goes. It's really random. Like there's been some periods where we've literally packed restaurants, small restaurants, and there'd be like 40, 50 people there, and it was like it did become too much. And then there's been other times it's like 3, 4 people show up, 5 people maybe. But it's I would say it's probably vary between like 6 and 7 on average to maybe like a dozen to 12 maybe, something like that. Probably like 6 to 12.
But you had something you want to say about power trips.
Yeah, power trips. Yeah, and one last thing before, did you say Phil Christiana?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just sent him a connection request on LinkedIn. So accept it, Phil.
I don't know if I'd want to be connected to him or on his radar. Not that, I mean, I probably already am, but I wouldn't want to go voluntarily purposely do that.
These people are so obsessed with our show, with Free Talk Live and Ian.
Mm-hmm.
They listen to every episode.
Did you see?
It's crazy.
As soon as my Free State Project interview came out where, oh yeah, you guys can go watch this. You can look up Free State Project on YouTube, and they have YouTube videos they put out. And actually one of the more recent interviews they've done, I guess he's not president. I forget what the position is, but he's like the president of the Free State Project right now, is interviewing people, especially different free staters. Okay. And he interviewed me, and as soon as it went live, there were these 4 accounts with like very like, what's the word, like basic names and pictures saying things like Ian Freeman is a fraudster, Bitcoin is a scam, over and over and over in the live chat. And it was so obvious. It's just a bunch of feds or bots run by the feds.
I'm amazed at how childish. I'm pretty confident it is the feds they're actual feds doing this, and it blows my mind how childish they are when they think they're anonymous. And it's just like, really, like really, you're gonna waste your time like fighting back and forth with the problem. And the funny thing is, it's probably like other feds too. They're fighting back and forth with. It's like.
And I think that they purposely do it that way. Like, it just looks like it's a organic conversation to some people. Like, I've been noticing it everywhere. Like, when I'm looking at somebody talking like nutrition, like you guys know, it's like my side hobby.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll see conversations in the comments, and I'm like, this feels like it's like feds trying to muddy the waters because otherwise people are going to get smart about what's getting them to be, on all these pharmaceuticals, etc.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely they have different angles and aspects, especially when it comes to politics, and like there's a history of the feds like going in to create division within communities and political organizations to undermine them. Like the government is really, really good at this, and I think there's no question in my mind that the feds have done that within the libertarian community, and especially within the Free State Project.
Yeah, definitely.
Itself, because it happens like, it almost happens like often even at a certain time of year. Like you just know it's going to happen at this time of year. And it's like there's people that come in, for example, that say things that are just not libertarian at all, and it's like,
especially violence related.
Yeah, where they'll say something that's violence, and I get that like some people come into our community and they're honest and they're not saying that they're libertarian, and I get that, and I don't even think it's always those people who are like the feds, but there's definitely people humming in and like pushing buttons and upsetting like actual libertarians, and then there's like these back and forths, and it's just like yeah. And of course the libertarians put up with it because we're all for like having intellectual conversations and things, even though these really end up just being a bunch of nonsense back and forth. But
a lot of times that can just cause so much drama. I really don't like the people who are obsessed with having debates, and it's like you can tell them I'm not interested in this debate anymore, and they just like can't drop it because you have to agree with them. Yeah. It's
So
one thing
power.
if it's, oh yeah, power.
Power. So okay, so you secession, right? Free State Project, right? You're working on the state level, and I've suggested at different times looking at the county level. And I want to interject, like when I call you Bonnie the Kid. So there's Billy the Kid, right? Who was a real person, and he actually was not an outlaw. He was actually a freedom fighter. Did you know that, Bonnie?
No.
Okay, well, it's real history, and it happened here in New Mexico, right over there and over there. Literally. I mean, the dude lived right here. This was his area, and he essentially was fighting the corrupt state of New Mexico. Only it was pre-statehood, so it was the territory of New Mexico. But they still had a governor and attorney general or U.S. attorney, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and they had counties and all the county positions, sheriff and stuff like that. And they were all corrupt, and they still are.
Yeah, I was going to say, has anything changed?
No, they haven't. And I throw that in their face when I talk to them, and that's why they won't talk to me anymore, which is where I'm going with this, and it's rather interesting. So, first of all, let me share a resource, because you guys have done that already in this program. There is this is FCC legal, bastardized history. Like Young Guns and Young Guns 2, the story of Billy the Kid, that kind of thing. But this is not that. This is not fiction. This is real history by a doctorate level researcher. Her name is Gail, Gale Cooper, and she has books, and on Spotify has a free, probably 20 hours of free podcast on Billy the Kid and all of the corruption in New Mexico. In the surrounding the Lincoln County War and the Colfax County War, and I think it was Colfax County that tried to secede from the state of New Mexico into Arizona. And she spent years and years and years researching all this history, and wrote a bunch of books and did these podcasts. And in fact, she actually sued the state of New Mexico. I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that. She had made, in the state they call them IPRA, Inspection of Public Records requests, which would be the equivalent of the Fed FOIA, the federal whatever. And the record she wanted was pertaining to, there was action taken, legal action, state level action, taken by the state of New Mexico to get, whether or not to get DNA evidence from Billy the Kid's mother, who is buried in Silver City, so that they can determine whether or not Billy the Kid actually was or was not killed.
Like going and getting her body, or was she still alive at that time?
No, Billy the Kid's mother. She this was 1880, Bonnie. Anyway, so she's buried, and they wanted to exhume her and get DNA.
Oh, okay, her DNA. I was like, where do you get what evidence? I see.
Yeah, because then they wanted to compare that to DNA that was supposedly of Billy the Kid in the form of blood that had stained a bench where they laid his body the night he was shot, and she submitted Inspection of Public Records request and never got what she was entitled to get under the law, and so she sued the state of New Mexico or whatever county it was. I don't remember exactly. She sued them to get that information, and they succeeded in making sure that she never got it.
Oh,
and they even spent $300,000 in legal bills, according to her, to stop her from getting this information that she wanted as a researcher.
That's nuts.
Yeah, and this ties in that's all suggesting the corruption of back in that day, which I allege continues to this very day. As you know, obviously, I allege that the state illegally trafficked my children, but coming to a different situation, I was recently hit over the head again by this corruption, in that the county here has laws like regarding these neighbors over here that run their generator, and there are actually noise ordinance laws that were enacted by the people of the county, in this case Socorro County, by and through their government agents, being the county commissioners. So I started trying to get the people in charge of these ordinances in the county to enforce their own law, and they won't do it. And so in my making phone calls to talk to people in the county about trying to get this enforced, what these people finally did at the county, the commissioners and the sheriff and the county manager and people that are subordinates to them, is they when I call there, what they first started doing is giving me the runaround. So I never got to the person that I needed to talk to. Then I kept calling, and then what they did is they stopped actually taking my call. They would answer, and when they discovered it was me, they would give me a little bit of runaround and end up hanging up on me.
Wow, yeah.
And then I went to the next level where they don't, when I dial the phone, they don't even answer the call. So the question is, if you're a citizen and you're calling for a 14th Amendment, a First Amendment and a 14th Amendment right, you're calling to petition your government, First Amendment, and then you're calling for equal protection under the law, 14th Amendment, and then the public officials that are in charge of taking that petition refuse to speak to you. Everybody else in the county can call and consult with their county officials. But if I'm David Olson, if I call, they refuse to communicate with me. So the question is that illegal?
I don't really know, but if that is legal, are you going to sue them?
Yeah, I don't know if let me jump in there real quick. So I'm not a lawyer, but I don't necessarily know that what you're referencing applies, but there are like legal concepts where you have to be like they can't treat people from California, that come to New Hampshire differently than New Hampshire people in New Hampshire or people who are native to New Hampshire. Yeah. And you might have something along that line in terms of an argument because they're treating you differently than somebody else.
Right. That's the 14th Amendment argument.
I don't know if the 14th Amendment, it might be, but I'm not 100% sure.
Equal protection under the law. Equal protection under the law.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you might have a case. Have you talked to any lawyers? Would you take it to court?
Well, I haven't talked to any lawyers, and from past experience, they probably wouldn't help you anyway unless you had cash on the barrelhead to pay them. Then they would definitely take your case and take your money. Mm-hmm. I could do it myself, but the question is it worth it?
Yeah, I just accidentally got my suit thrown out in Keene I'm suing the city of Keene for not making our houses tax exempt, our house that acts as parsonage to the church. And I thought I did everything right. And one day they just sent me an email. They never sent me anything in the mail. They said on the website where you're forced to use a website to file everything that I did everything right and I was just supposed to wait. And then I got an email, nothing in the mail, no first email, saying, oh, this has been thrown out by blah, 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 judge, whatever her name is, because of failure to do your service, failure to serve the city of Keene. I was like, oh my God, how am I supposed to know all this crap? So I have to start all over again. And at some point, it's like, when do I try to hire a lawyer? But at the same time, I feel like there's not a lawyer that is going to be sympathetic to the Shire Free Church in New Hampshire. We'd probably already know them.
Right.
Yeah, that's a difficult one to fight.
Oh yeah.
Do you think you're going to take it to court yourself though?
Well, that's what I was alluding to when I say, is it worth it? And in my case, it may or may not be, and it probably isn't, because unless I were to get monetary damages out of it to the tune of a couple $100,000 or more for a 14th Amendment civil rights violation and a First Amendment civil rights violation. Unless I get that kind of monetary award, is it worth it?
Yeah, because you have to spend your money and
I
time.
can see them saying that the government ruling or the court's ruling something to the effect that they have no obligation to serve you.
Yeah,
which
that's
is something
what I was thinking. I just didn't think of that term. I think you're right. They might rule it that way.
I mean, it does seem kind of odd though. But it's interesting. So in theory, they should still have to serve you equally,
they
right?
absolutely should,
so
because that's in the Constitution.
Even
but I also wouldn't.
If
put
they
it
don't have
past
an
them.
obligation to serve, I would think so. Maybe you still have a legal argument of some kind.
Yeah. I wish that I could trust that a lawyer would just take his case and actually want to argue it for, like his rights being infringed, but I really doubt it. But we do have another caller on the line. Kadu in Connecticut, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Bonnie, that's 3 nights in a row. You're going to need like a big nap or something. You've been working too hard.
Yeah, Anna's first chair all 3 nights. Usually I'm not first chair on Sundays.
So I had something on that whole anti-drug dare thing.
Oh, yeah.
And that, they said...
Uh-oh. Yeah, you want to hold on to the next segment, Kadu? Thank you. 603-283-6160 is the phone number to call to get in on the conversation. Talk about whatever is on your mind. Hope that David gets that resolved somehow. Then again, I don't want the cops to serve me. I would rather them just get in trouble for breaking their own laws. That would be just, really cool to see. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up. 603-283-6160.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. Physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. US President-elect Donald Trump looks set to escape trial for his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election results and for retaining classified documents after investigators filed a motion to drop the case. Special counsel Jack Smith moved to dismiss 2 criminal cases against the former president due to a long-standing Justice Department policy that bars the prosecution of a sitting president. Benji Heyer reports from Washington.
He didn't win in the courtroom, but at the ballot box, and Donald Trump's victory in 2024 all but puts to an end his legal challenges by consigning his outstanding trials to the ash heap of history, both the one dealing with the previous election, which culminated in a deadly riot on Congress, and another on his alleged hoarding of classified documents, which was dismissed by a Trump-appointed judge this summer and is also being abandoned today by the Justice Department. His sentencing in his hush money case was postponed last week following a Supreme Court ruling which grants him presidential immunity. Having largely evaded America's justice system, Trump now has a chance to weaponize it in his favor as soon as he takes office.
New reporting suggests Israel could be on the verge of a ceasefire deal with Hezbollah in Lebanon following months of fighting. An agreement could be reached as soon as Tuesday when the Israeli cabinet next meets. Our US correspondent Mitch McCann reports.
Israeli media outlets as well as the US news website Axios are reporting that both sides are moving closer to an agreement in the American-led peace talks. Over the past year, more than 3,500 Lebanese people have been killed and 15,000 injured in the fighting. Meanwhile, Hezbollah has continued to launch strikes at Israel, with heavy rockets fired across the border as recently as Sunday. Reports suggest that a draft agreement would include a 60-day transition period, during which the Israeli Defense Forces would withdraw from southern Lebanon. Hezbollah would relocate its heavy weapons north of the Litani River, and the Lebanese army would deploy closer to the border. If a deal is reached, it could allow hundreds of thousands of people on either side of the border to return home. Mitch McCann, New York.
US retailers are hoping to lure shoppers to Black Friday sales in a bid to boost consumer spending. Analysts predict the US could see subdued sales over the holiday season if shoppers continue to tighten their wallets. Sally Patterson reports from New York.
The US National Retail Federation forecasts that winter holiday sales will reach almost $1 trillion in November and December. But the rate of spending growth is expected to be the slowest the country's seen since 2018. Even though inflation is coming down, analysts say consumer spending on non-essential items remains uninspiring.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. And are you tired of the oppressive rules and moderation of the big tech social media sites? Our Mastodon server at social.freetalklive.com can set you free. Mastodon is free, open source, decentralized, and federated. Multiple apps are available for iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, and Linux. Social.freetalklive.com. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Riley.
And Mr. Penguin.
And we had a caller on the line already. That number is 603-283-6160 if you'd like to get in on the conversation. But Kadu in Connecticut, in the last break, you just started talking, and you wanted to talk about the DARE program. I don't remember what it stood for. Drugs are bad. No, I'm just kidding. But something like that. It was like cops sometimes would come to your school and tell you drugs are bad. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a good impersonation of the
South Park.
Equivalent.
Yep, it was just like that. So you had a story about when, did you participate in that specific program at school?
No, but they used to have, these cops come into the school, and we had one called Officer Dave who would always come in. But then, there would be these other ones, and I remember one time they actually had like a little bit of like samples of all the drugs for all the kids to try. No, not for the kids to try.
Wait, what?
But they literally did like show one time bringing samples that were all there, like, this is what marijuana looks like. This is what this looks like. I remember that one time, but
I only had pictures.
Yeah, I don't think they ever did anything like that in DARE. With
probably
us
wasn't
anyway.
the real thing. It was probably like a replica, and they were probably like, this
That's
is what
a good
you
point,
need to
because
watch out for.
I would believe that they would do something like that, like a replica, because when I was in high school, I had these friends, they had so many siblings, and all the sisters who were kind of older were smoking weed in the sister's closet. And one day they told me, like, oh, we got caught, our parents found it, I was like, how? Their, 5-year-old little brother found it and brought it to their parents, and I was like, how did they know what it was, like, that was bad and they should bring it to the parents? And they said because they learned about it in whatever indoctrination that they learned about it, that weed was bad. They were crying, they brought it to the parents, they're like, our sisters are doing this bad thing in the closet. Yeah. So how would a little kid know what that even looked like or what it was? My little sister did a similar thing too, though. She was like
She found your weed?
Yes. She was like 8. She found my weed in a tree outside my house in a bag.
Oh, wow.
Opens the bag, walks up and hands it to my dad without saying a word, and walks away with a disappointed look on her face. And I don't think that she had DARE. She was 8. So that's just a mystery. I don't know. I don't know what's up with that one.
You hid your weed in a tree?
Yeah, because I lived with my parents for it was just the last few weeks I lived with my parents before I moved to Texas. So they didn't really do anything to me. They're like, seriously, you could get us kicked off base, blah, blah, blah. Because I was
I was going to say,
I was in my 20s.
Is they claim they want everyone to resist peer pressure, but then every day you're forced around 20 random strangers your exact age who are probably around your maturity level or even worse, some of them. And so they say no peer pressure, but then you're surrounded. They put you with these random peers constantly.
That's such a good point. That's so unnatural if you think about it. like most people would be around a whole bunch of different kids, like slightly differing ages. You could learn from the older kids, like kids learning from their older siblings. If you're like an only child, you could learn from some kids that are a bit older than you in the community that your parents let all hang around, you know, instead of this, oh, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, we got to ship our kids to these little pods. They're only around people of their exact like age, and they're all being treated exactly the same. It's so stupid and unnatural. And it's child abuse to send your kids to public school.
And then it occurred to me too, even though they're supposedly authority figures, really they're just another form of peer pressure with the whole anti-drug angle, like never do any of this, just say no, never blah blah. It's not like they're trying to provide you with the most objective information that, you know, and teach you how to evaluate it, and so you can be truly informed. They're just trying to pressure you into the other way, like avoid this at all costs because you will end up dead in a ditch.
Yep.
You know?
They do scare tactics. The cop that would come to my classroom, I'm not really sure if this was Dare specifically, I think it was, in 5th grade, the cop, his name was Officer Cummings, and all the little boys would laugh. And I was like, what's funny about that?
I'm laughing.
And they would be like saying that, they were like, well, the name is funny. And I was like, why is that funny? And I seriously had no clue for like years until like I thought back, and I was like, I just had that memory.
4th grade
was
was
like,
this?
No, 5th.
In 5th grade. In 5th grade, really? And you didn't know?
I was like, why is that funny? And they just laughed more.
Did they not have any kind of sex ed or anything like that?
Not in 5th grade.
No?
I was
Really?
only in school 3rd, 4th, and 5th at that point. I was homeschooled before then.
Okay.
And yeah, I didn't have 5th grade.
I'm almost sure that at least in 5th grade,
Even if you did, would they have taught you that word?
Probably not.
I don't know.
I feel like they would.
I mean, they would have used. I don't know.
They
What
would have used the word,
I'm
like,
not sure what I can say on
orgasm.
air, but certainly equivalents of that word. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I just think like the slang for things probably wouldn't have been taught, but maybe you learn from other boys or something. But like I didn't, and that was fun with me. I like to like climb trees and read books and stuff like that. I wasn't thinking about anything like that for a very long time.
Yeah, I think they at least where I went to school in the sex ed classes in like the 4th and 5th grade. I mean, not as much as in 4th grade, but by 5th grade they definitely had all of the elemental stuff. You know,
I feel like the first time I ever encountered like any kind of sex ed type of class was 7th grade, and even then, like I remember them showing us like what a uterus is, telling us periods will start.
That was probably like 6th grade for us.
Showing us like testes and telling boys what'll happen with them, whatever. But
yeah, they did that in 5th grade. Like
they did that in 6th grade for me.
They didn't get into like having sex. They didn't get into like STDs. Actually, they did, but later that was later in a health class I had, which is more about like health.
Yeah, this like having sex was probably more like freshman high school.
That's so weird.
But like the baby and the baby stuff I think was middle school. But like actual sex, like intercourse and STDs and stuff like that was probably high school. But yeah, but like just the basics of like, you know, like what comes out of the body, that was definitely 5th grade.
Yeah. Even if something comes out of the body, I don't think they would have used that exact word that
Yeah,
the boys were laughing about.
they had like naked pictures and like of boys and girls and like cartoon drawings and stuff like that. You know,
why can't parents teach their kids that stuff themselves? It's so much more awkward to be in a group with in a school with a bunch
Parents
of
have a
people.
hard time teaching kids about sex because it feels embarrassing for them for some reason.
Well, you know, the weird thing about that is that you start at like a very young age, like with babies at a very young age, teaching these kind of like parts, like, you know, the words and things like that. So you think this wouldn't be that big of a deal. But
yeah, I saw this tweet where this lady said she's pregnant and her, I think, 8-year-old son was like, "Mommy, how will the baby come out? Is there a hatch?" Which is a really funny word. Is there a hatch that the baby's going to come out of? How will the baby get out of there? And so she was like, I think he's mature enough to handle it. And she told him, well, do you want to know the truth? The baby will come out of mommy's privates. And the baby like cried and screamed and ran away. But I'm sure he's better off because of it.
The 8-year-old?
Yeah.
Why would the 8-year-old cry and scream and run away? Because
creeped out.
It might
because
be
of the privates, because it's been instilled in them that it's a private area and somehow it's bad.
Or that it is just gross to them or something like that. Maybe they didn't cry, but they were like, ew, and like,
See,
didn't
like
want to hear
this is
anymore.
all like mental trauma that is inflicted by society. Like when you teach
Puritanical
kids,
societies definitely inflict trauma, for
when
sure.
you teach kids that like, oh, that's a private area and it's bad, it's like that's not really a good way to do it. I mean, like, and the interesting thing is, it's not the way it's done elsewhere in the world. Like, like it's like such an American Puritanism.
That's so true. It is very American.
Thing. Like, you know, if you go elsewhere, it's like it's a very, very small minority that's like, oh my gosh, it's somebody's naked. You know, most people are like, yeah, okay. And even in the United States, it's like it's become more Puritan over the decades. Like kids like in America like in the probably like in the 60s, I'm guessing. Like I had uncles who had told me at some point like the kids. Now this probably would have been like some sort of Catholic or religious school, but maybe not. But the boys like would have gym and it would be all boys, but they'd be naked. Like there was no bathing suits or anything like that.
Whoa, like playing games naked?
Yeah.
Not just changing out? Whoa.
Yeah, not just like in the gym
In America?
locker room. In America, in the United States. But it just goes to tell you, like I never encountered anything like close to that. I mean, even in the gym class, we didn't shower, right? Well,
Just kidding.
yeah, right. No, but the point is that like it's gotten so absurd, like the puritanical like thing. No, I have seen things in my own, like from 40 years that I've, become an adult. Like, they used to have lockers in like just not in government schools, but at least while I was going through the government schools, but like outside of government schools, you'd go to a pool or something like that. They'd have lockers and people would change in the open, people would be naked, no big deal. But, they've done away with that. If you ever go to like any kind of like theme park or, water park or, all that, those are now like individual stalls. You go into a stall and you change. Yeah, like that kind of stuff. It's for whatever reason we can't. We're afraid. We've all instilled in it's like not. It's not us. It's not our generation. It's like previous generations have instilled this idea that like nudity is bad and private parts are bad. You can't. If anything, you just whatever. Don't talk about them. It's really
It's like I definitely can understand the like need to teach little kids that they're private, but I guess you could do that without it having a negative connotation.
Sure.
Like you don't want it to pull this out, little Jimmy, because you're in public. So teach them that, but you could do that without it making them like cry to think about them.
I think it might have to do with I don't know exactly what time period it started, but like I mean you could go back to like the 50s and find like propaganda with like gays and things like that, but like at some point I think it was probably closer to the 90s.
Oh, like the propaganda would be like, oh, gay guys will come and get your kids, or is that what you're saying?
I'm trying to think of the films, but like they had a film where like if you like they basically just said like any gay person's gonna like rape your child basically, and
wow,
it was ridiculous, but whatever.
That is ridiculous.
Anyway, but the point is I think it was probably closer to the 90s where the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, doubt is what they call it, probably really got instilled in like because there were some kidnapping cases I think in the 90s, maybe it was even earlier than that, maybe it was like the 80s, but it was definitely propagandized all throughout the 80s and 90s, in that like a kid walking home from school, they're gonna get kidnapped and raped and stuff, and it's just like that's not reality, but that's what was instilled in parents' heads, and so it became I don't know, I think it might be somehow connected to that that fear mongering that occurred by the media, and in reality it's like the stats, violent crime stats, it's been going down for decades and decades and decades,
and your like kids are most likely to get abused in like anyway from
family,
somebody close to them.
Yeah, it's most likely, in most cases, it's family or like a family friend that is going to, if your kid is raped or whatever, it's going to be them. It's not going to be some random person on the street or kidnapping.
And the thing is, like, you know why that might have been like a thing that got big? It's probably because mothers stopped staying home with their kids. Like if you have a nanny you barely trust watching your kids, they're probably more likely to be in danger than if you're at home watching your kids. I think it's so weird that the government schools became just like babysitting places to send your kids, and also that it became so normal for women to have babies and be like, well, I don't want to stay home and watch them. I just can't even imagine that. Like, I don't do that with my dog. I don't send my dog away so I can do my tasks throughout the day, and that would horrify me. The idea that people are like, well, I have a stupid office job to do. I know there are people that definitely like need to, but I think anyone can make anything work. I think anyone
Maybe
can
we
make
should
anything work.
normalize bringing kids to work.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea in some offices.
Sure.
I guess it does depend on some, though.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that really helps the overall situation, because like maybe your kid is at work, but then you can't pay attention to them, and
there's
screaming.
probably another aspect to this too. We've been having fewer and fewer kids. The number per woman is like I think it might be like around 2 in the United States. It's even less outside, and I think 2 is the number that is like, in order to sustain the population, you have to have like 2 kids per woman or something.
2.1, yeah,
something like that
on average.
And it used to be like you have 9 kids, and a few of them would die, and like and it just sort of got to a point where it's like, okay, there's so few kids now, like you have to treat every little kid like a king or a princess or whatever, and it's like it's just not the way it used to be. It's it's like It's a mentality that like, oh, you can only afford 1 kid, so you better make sure that they survive and nothing bad ever happens. And it's like, that's probably not a good way to
I hope at this
treat
point
the world
that like most people understand nothing bad can ever happen to my kid is a horrible mentality. It's going to end up with them like not very fulfilled, or
you have adults now that can't take care of themselves because of that mentality.
Too many adult men don't know how to do laundry, and it's so shocking. Like, I've heard it so many times from guys like my age being like, yeah, when I first got to college I had to Google it, and it's like, I can't even imagine that.
I can't imagine that
college
either.
And not have ever done laundry.
It shocks me how much
the only people I can understand who may not understand how to do laundry are like super rich Kuwaiti kids or like Saudi Arabian
princes.
Yeah, like because they have more money than they know what to do with.
Yeah.
And rich kids from that part of the world, like they dwarf the amount of money they have by comparison to American wealth. Like, you just don't even know we don't know what wealthy is in America. Like, we think we do, but like we don't.
I was taught at 12 how to do laundry. My parents insisted that I learn how to do chores and things like that.
See, I learned to do laundry, I guess, basically when I probably went out, like I went away for the first time, like to a camp or something like that. That would have been when I probably was first, shown how to do laundry. But I mean, I don't know, like I probably saw it prior to that, like my parents doing it. So I probably had some idea.
The other thing is, like, I'm always shocked that that's not something you can just figure out, but I always was like the one tasked specifically with laundry. It's like I really didn't want to do dishes, so I would try to get out of it by doing all the laundry. Like, I'll do laundry all day to not have to do other things, like dishes. So, I mean, I already knew how to do dishes. I was doing that since I was like 4 years old. But I know lots of people who their parents just never made them do stuff. Yeah, like, you can get a 4-year-old to be like, okay, now the spoons go in here, grab them, and then after a while they're doing it by themselves. Maybe sometimes you have to take a dish and rewash it yourself because the kid didn't do a good job somehow, like, rinsing it before. But you can teach kids to do a whole lot more than I think people think, like,
oh yeah, for sure.
Earlier.
For sure. I mean, we had kids 5-year-olds working in sweatshops, in the 1800s. I mean, the idea that kids can't do these basic things is so absurd.
Yeah.
And it really does them a disservice by not teaching them how to do these things.
Exactly. And you're saying like, oh, the only way I can understand that is if they're super rich. And that's definitely a thing that happens. Like, my sister's boyfriend's family runs like these basically camps that rich people will send their kids to, who are like 19 at this point, who never learned skills in life, and they just need to be taught how to do skills because they don't know how to do anything. Yeah, that's a real service.
Oh my God, this sounds like how
and those are rich kids.
So this is how women's colleges started, actually, from what I understand. So like, it basically in the early days of like sending your girls or women or whatever, young women to college, it wasn't to get an education, it was to teach them how to do like housework and laundry. And
I never heard that.
Yeah. And the other main thing is to get a husband that is upper class, as opposed to like, some,
on the street
blue collar worker. Yeah.
But the thing is, like, there are definitely parents who aren't like rich or anything who just simply, it's my baby, even when they're like 19. I'm going to do his laundry for him. I'm going to do his taxes for him. I know parents like that, and it is insane.
So I understand about the guiding thing. Like, I'm not like I think that makes sense to guide young people, but the idea that like you're gonna do every little thing for them and never teach them anything is like,
and that they're gonna look back and be like, wow, she really loved me more than other moms loved me. Like, honestly,
like
I can a disservice to them.
I can understand somebody showing their kid how to do taxes like when they're 20 or whatever because they're doing it for the first time or something like that. Like to me that makes sense, but like that's not. I don't know, like it's the laundry thing that just blows my mind. Like how do you get to college and not have ever done a load of laundry?
I have no idea. It really blows my mind. Plus, like, you can just like use YouTube instead of being just like, oh, I ruined all my clothes over and over again. I just don't understand. But we do have another caller on the line, so I'm going to go to them before the segment's over. Sarah in New Mexico, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Oh, yeah. Mr. X, Dr. X was on his show, and he was talking about buying and eating chicken feet for collagen.
That is pretty normal, especially if you cook them for a really long time, and it's like kind of making bone broth, but with the chicken feet. And
but I was shocked that I saw my neighbors eat it, and they were black, so I thought, well, that's kind of slavery food, and I was like, oh,
what?
Then I
think lots of people eat. I immediately thought of just like Louisiana. Like I don't think it's necessarily like bad food. I've never tried it, but I'm just like in shock. That's so funny.
I'm just shocked that Sarah brought up chicken feet and called it slavery food.
That's what I'm saying. I'm shocked about.
What do you guys?
Well, I mean, but they have the traditions of the African Americans. They always had like the pig pork snout, pork tail, chitlins, and then they always only ate chicken because they're all like leftovers from the masters, right?
Yeah, so the thing about that is, like, it's definitely true that at that time, like, maybe the people, the plantation owners or whatever, would be, like, eating the cuts they found better and then leaving quote-unquote scraps for their slaves. But the thing is, like, going back even way further back, people used to eat every part of the animal. They wouldn't let it go to waste, and the chicken feet is a great source of collagen, and collagen keeps you looking young, so I would totally do it. I
definitely think that was weird because it was out of context.
It was so just shocking that she'd say that.
Yeah, like it was like some racist like where are you going with this, Sarah?
No, but it was, Mr. X is like a German white herbal doctor or something. He has a collagen formula powder drink, and like me and my wife was buying chicken feet and we're cooking it all the time, and we're just getting tired of doing it. I'm just like, wait a minute, he's a white educated man talking about eating chicken feet.
Is this something that you see on like late night television, like some sort of scam artist trying to sell you the latest fad?
Well, that's not gonna make him a billionaire selling chicken feet.
Nobody will say he's a billionaire or a millionaire or rich or something like that, and then
like,
try and pitch you something that's just nonsense.
Yeah, but I don't think it's nonsense because
I don't know who this guy is, but
I don't know him either.
Is that who this guy is? Like some sort of TV guy?
He's not selling you some kind of a pill or something. He's selling you something you can go
know
get yourself.
Ancient nutrition. Bring it up on the Google. Ancient nutrition collagen.
Well,
yeah, I don't think
is he selling the collagen? Oh, she hung up. It might be that he is actually saying, yeah, chicken feet is where we get our collagen. And Sarah's like, what? Black people food? And that's crazy. That
is kind of crazy, but chicken feet are probably pretty nutritious for us.
I think it would be because it's a source of gelatin. I've been seeing like people talking about that a lot recently. Not that I've been like really itching to go buy it, because really I prefer beef broth, and there's a brand near me. I don't even want to tell the people in Keene where I get it because I go take it all off the shelf. And it's beef bone broth that is not fed soy.
Ooh, nice.
It's like I could make it myself with a chicken foot, and then I'd have to know what the chicken was eating, and I don't know. I don't know if I.
Oh, don't worry. I won't be competing with you for it. If it doesn't, so. if it doesn't work with the 1 minute button, if the cooking is more than pressing the 1 minute button and putting it into the microwave, I ain't going there.
You wouldn't cook pasta on the stove, Chris?
I don't even know. I didn't even know you could cook pasta on the stove.
You can, dude. I made some today.
Like boiling water and then pouring the dry noodles in.
Oh yeah, that's how pasta's made, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I knew you're not a cooker.
My
so.
pasta comes in dishes, and the sauces are all in there. And
You put it
I
in
just
the
put
microwave?
1 minute button on the microwave. I might have to hit that 5 times or something like that. But
That's
yeah,
actually what I do too. If I ever use a microwave, which I don't usually use to cook, I use it to reheat. I just continuously use the 1 minute button because that way you don't burn anything.
Right?
It's been Free Talk Live. Thank you for listening. You can go to freetalklive.com. Also, please check out freeiannow.org. Thank you so much for listening. Peace.
You can't win if you don't enter, and you actually can improve your chances of winning a prize drawing if you wrinkle up your entry blank. I'm Holland Cook from survivalspeech.com, and I speak from experience. Why this works: if they'll be spinning the drum before drawing, your entry blank will move around more than, and not adhere to, other perfectly flat entry blanks. And if they don't spin the drum and merely reach into a box full of other perfect